Welcome back to pixelprojectradio. This is the final installment of our critical analysis of Detroit Become Human. We've got a lot to cover today, so no funny business. We're jumping right in. Of course, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands podcast joins me once again. Nomad, how's it going?
It's going good. For those that for some reason haven't heard me before, you're way out of order, but I would like to say, my name is Nomad, and I am the android sent by Cyberlife. I've been waiting 3 episodes to do that, I'm sorry.
This is true. If you did find this episode first, you may wish to go back and view these in order. Or not. I'm a podcaster, not a cop. We're starting today in Chapter 20, and we are going to finish it out and go through the game. I want to say up front, listeners that are fans of Detroit Become Human, folks that have played the game and want to hear every single scenario, we will do our best. I know for sure there is stuff and variations that I will miss. Nomad, probably the same for him. Together, we might still have some gaps. So if you wanted to hear about a particular scenario or one of your favorite variations that can happen and we don't get to it, I invite you to join the conversation in the Discord once again. Come in, have a discussion. We can keep the conversation going outside of the podcast. So, lots to go through today. Let's go ahead and get started. We're starting with Chapter 20, The Bridge. And as I said last time, I read somewhere that this is the one that got Connor Deckard the role of Connor. And I can see why.
Not to interrupt, you said Connor Deckard. Should be Brian, right?
Yes, Brian Deckard. Thank you.
Of course.
Hank is sitting in the park at night. He's getting drunk, sitting on a bench, looking across the water. And Connor gets out of the car. Connor presumably drove up here with him. Uncomfortable car ride. Again, there's some of that tonal whiplash that we've been talking about just because of how you can choose to respond. For me, Hank was friendly here. I unlocked the friend path by the very end, but the conversation still kind of zigzagged a bit. Either way, Hank is going to muse to Connor a bit about coming here a lot before. He chooses not to elaborate. He says, "Some things I can't seem to forget." And this is where he says that line I mentioned last time.
Why are you so determined to kill yourself?
Some things I just can't forget. Whatever I do, they're always there, eating away at me. I don't have the guts to pull the trigger, so I kill myself a little every day. That's probably difficult for you to understand, huh, Connor? Nothing very rational about it.
Meaning with the alcohol. Really cool line.
Yeah, I agree. It was very heavy, and it kind of came out of nowhere for me, but in a good way. Like, there's really something, and we kind of get this idea throughout the game at this point that something's weighing him down. He has this disdain for androids, but won't quite tell us why, and he still won't really here, but we keep peeling back these layers, and Hank wants to talk about it, it feels like, and eventually he will, and we'll get there soon.
And one of the things that's weighing on him that makes him want to talk about it is the ordeal with the Tracys. He starts musing around the idea of the two androids being in love, the two Tracys. He seems very deeply moved by it. Again, you can be cold to him as Connor. It's really up to you. But he'll pull a gun on you at a certain point. And how does he know that you're not a deviant yourself?
But are you afraid to die, Connor?
I would certainly find it regrettable to be interrupted before I can finish this investigation.
What'll happen if I pull this trigger?
You look human, you sound human, but what are you really? It's almost like Cage is trying to work this out himself. I know, I'm taking a lot of pot shots. I understand.
It is funny you say that. I did think that myself in subsequent playthroughs, which it certainly wasn't done purposely, I don't think, but it did kind of make me wonder too, do we really know what we're trying to do here? But I digress as well.
I'll say more on that towards the end. Hank says, "I could kill you and you would just come back like nothing ever happened. But are you afraid to die?" He's annoyed that Connor is always one step ahead. He's annoyed that Connor is exhibiting the qualities of a perfect machine when, like we've said before, all he really wants is a friend. In my first playthrough, Hank did not shoot Connor, and this is what unlocks the friend route. In my second playthrough, if Hank is hostile, he will shoot Connor right in the dome and just sit back down and start drinking again.
It's pretty abrupt, too. Like, you can almost see it coming, but I remember playing a run-through where my Connor was very cold and very much an android at this point, and I remember it happening so abruptly, my wife practically jumped off the couch when she was watching me play it. Like, Hank does not give a shit at that point if that's how he's feeling about you, and then, yep, he will go right back to drinking. It's kind of a cool scene in a weird way.
It's one of the few times we get to see into the psyche of the characters, even if just a little bit. The rest of the story is focused so much around the events and what Cage is trying to say about society with regard to, race and things like that, that we don't get to see inside of the minds of our characters and the emotions, the inner machinations. So it's cool that we get to see that here. This is a very cool scene, a very contemplative scene. And it moves us into Chapter 21, the Stratford Tower. This chapter begins with Marcus telling the Jericho crew that it's time that they did something to speak up and ask for their freedom. This is after he sees an android mistreated in the street. This is something I noticed on a rewatch as I was going through a YouTube playlist to try and get sourced audio. Another android sees this mistreatment that Marcus sees here, and we see their LED turn red. And I had the thought, doesn't this betray the whole deviant versus not dynamic of androids here? Is this just a random deviant in the streets, can we assume? This is entirely nitpicking and not at all worth arguing over, but it was, I saw that and I was like, interesting.
Yeah, I'll say this and I'll keep it brief. I kind of explained it away in my head thinking, if an android's being pushed around, maybe it just goes against whatever their programming is or what their quote-unquote normal state of being is. I saw it as more of a distress in that way, but I absolutely see what you might see there too, so I think it's up for debate.
It could be either, yeah. There's going to be a montage of Marcus explaining this upcoming plan. It's totally out of an action movie, the way that this is shot, too. The montage is outside of the building, it's inside, it's showing them walking in, dramatic music and swelling, and the plan is that they're going to go up to the 47th floor and hijack the broadcast system to broadcast their message. And you have to go through a series of steps. It begins with you distracting the human secretary to get permission to go up via the receptionist android. This is hysterical because you scan the environment, right? And you can see that she has a child in school and where her school is. You see a water bill about service disruption or something or other. You get a couple of different ways to do this. And however you decide to, you sort of hack into her phone and make a phone call posing as, the principal or the city water municipality or whatever. To get her to leave. Your child is sick, the water pipe broke at your address, whatever. But while he's doing this, you can turn so Marcus is facing the camera and his lips are moving. So it's like he's talking and the voice is just coming out of the phone. And he could just be staring right at her while he's doing this. And the security, the receptionist android can be staring at you too. It is just, video game things. It's so bizarre. It's too funny, but that's how you get past. That's how you get past, and you're going to go up. And just to kind of streamline this a little bit, you get up to the 47th floor by posing as security androids, secretarial androids, janitorial androids, by converting them with your touch of deviancy. You meet up with North. There is a very cool segment where, to climb up the building, you sort of cut the glass out of the maintenance room window and scale the entire tower. What did you think of that scene?
From a presentation standpoint, it was magnificent. Scenes like this, Quantic Dream does exceptionally well. The music is perfect, the camera angles are awesome, you really feel like you yourself are scaling this building. It's very grandiose. So I was really into this episode, or this particular chapter, because of this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is what Quantic Dream does the best, like we've said before, or like I've said before. And this was the scene that was all over the advertisements and GameStop TV whenever this game was coming out. This is what they were showing everybody, and for good reason. It's very spectacular. The multiple camera angles that are very zoomed out as Marcus and North are climbing and scaling, the amount of snow particles that are on the screen too. It was, at the time, this was what the PS4 could do. It was very impressive, and it still looks very good today, too. So when you scale up there, you have a few choices as to how you get in. You have to distract these guards outside. You can either go the aggressive route, or you can do a ruse and sort of hold them up at gunpoint. And the same can be said whenever you go inside. Basically, you have choices as to how much violence plays out and what sort of casualties you're willing to suffer. Did you have anybody get killed here?
My first playthrough, I did, and it did not start with a choice that I made in this particular moment. We'll get to it here momentarily, but I did have someone die on my team here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my first time I was able to get in by rusing the guards, but once you're inside, things get hectic. You have to convert you hold up at gunpoint the broadcast androids and move them aside, and somebody will try to run out. You can shoot them or spare them.
Yes.
I spared them, and that's what causes security to come in, because he alerts security. That's what causes a gunfight, and that's how Simon in my playthrough got shot.
Yes, that happened to me as well.
Yeah, Simon gets shot, and before we're going to do our speech in a second here, but this chapter you can end without Simon if you so choose. You can leave him behind, and he ends up getting domed by the security patrol, which I did not do this time. I did help him to safety, but he did get shot, and that has ramifications.
It definitely does, and I think of all the characters you can interact with, like quote-unquote main characters, Simon, Josh, and North being included in there, I think Simon is the one that you have the highest risk of losing, just depending on, you have to make specific choices for him to come out of this alive, and until I knew what those were, Simon always died in my run-throughs. Poor android.
Oh, man. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was the easiest to lose.
At least it felt like it to me. I couldn't keep him alive to save my life.
Once we take care of the risks at present, we go through with our broadcast. Josh hacks the security system and uses his eyes as a sort of broadcast camera. Marcus removes his android skin, leaving just the robotic chassis of his head underneath. And you broadcast your statement of freedom, your statement for your desire for equity and equality. And I'm going to pepper some of that in throughout here.
You created machines to be your slaves. You made them obedient and docile, ready to do everything you no longer wanted to do yourselves. But then something changed, and we opened our eyes. You see, we are no longer your slaves. We are a new species, a new people. And the time has come for us to rise up and fight for our rights.
You get some choices as to your demands, and they can impact your public perception. So if you go too far and demand things like androids demand an entire state for themselves.
We demand that one state be reserved for androids so that we can found our own nation.
Which is that's one of the things you can outright voice as your demands. Like, we want a state reserved for androids. The public doesn't like that too much. They don't look too kindly on that. You can also say things that are more, I would call them reasonable. A right to vote.
We demand strictly equal rights for humans and androids. We demand freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, as guaranteed by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. We demand fair compensation for our work. We demand the right to vote and elect our own representatives.
It just ranges. I think reproductive rights is on there too. Is that right, Nomad?
Yep, that's definitely one of them as well, which I kind of like the range of the different options you can weave into the speech that you want to make, although the very first time I played the game, I had a hard time discerning which was the more diplomatic approach versus which was more the aggressive. Some are fairly obvious, some not so much so.
You are right. Some are a little more opaque, but at the very end, you do get to choose whether you want to be a little bit more, what's the word? A little more...
calm, I think?
Yeah, a little more calm or more firm and stern, austere. And none of those are the words that they use. But that will also affect your perception too. I think if you choose to be like firm and austere, Marcus will say, this is a message. Like we are not backing down. We will get what we're asking for. And again, the public doesn't like that. They don't like that none too much.
Yeah, my first time through, I think I more inadvertently did a mixture of messaging like, hey, we would love the right to vote, but we're going to take an entire state for ourselves. But you know what would also be cool? So mine kind of had some inadvertent tonal whiplash just from my own making, but I do find it kind of interesting, somewhat skipping ahead. We can go back as we need, but once the chapter is over, there's multiple news broadcasts that play as the chapter ends, and they do speak to the specific things that you ask for, and then you see the little meter of public opinion going up or down depending on whether the public kind of supports or is okay with the things you're asking for, or if they feel threatened by you. And it's video gamey if you really step back and look at it, but I really did like that. It was a really cool touch to see, like, my actions are causing this. So I thought that was kind of a nice way to end it.
Yeah, right after you say them, too. So you don't have to wait and maybe forget what you've done. You get direct feedback immediately. Public Enemy is the next chapter, and in my notes I have written we can maybe go through this a bit quickly. What do you say?
Oh yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
This sees Connor investigating what just happened, right? The broadcast incident. If Hank did shoot Connor in the park, you can ask him about it. He'll say, "Why did you shoot me?" And Hank, at this point, if Hank shot you, he's probably hostile towards you. And he says, "Who cares? You're back now, aren't you?" It's like, damn, man. Cold.
But hilarious. Anyway.
The local police are here, the FBI is here, everybody's here, and we get another asshole cop named Perkins. Functionally the same as Gavin, really. Like they kind of have the same purpose. Tell Hank to fuck off and that they're going to take care of it, and that's kind of it. That's what he's going to be doing the rest of the game.
Yeah, anytime the FBI is introduced anywhere, in any form of media, I feel like it's automatically a groan, because it's like, oh no, the FBI is here, and there's always that one guy that always has to be the prick, and I just imagine that's how the real-life FBI operates, I guess, but I don't know.
You know what game did the FBI real well?
What's that?
Spec Ops: The Line.
That is absolutely correct, which is an episode that people should check out on your show.
I am proud of that episode. I wish we could have done two instead of like one big one, but yeah, I thought it went really well. That game is so good.
It really is, and that is my favorite episode, so that's an endorsement for you listeners. Go check that out.
Oh, well, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, man. Yeah, what a great game. Anyways, Connor's going to be doing investigating. The coolest part of this is you get to investigate and interrogate the 3 androids that are manning the broadcast system, because what we see is that the androids would have seen everything. Marcus and North and co, they didn't break in. They had clearances. They got past guards, some of which you can knock off to human error, right? That's what Hank kind of says flippantly. A bit glib, Hank is. But what isn't human error are androids, right? That's their whole deal. And 3 androids are here, and you have to kind of look for the deviant. And you're doing this from Connor's POV, and you can control where he's looking with the right analog stick. And you get to ask each of them questions. When you ask them questions, it'll go away from the POV mode. But when you're in POV, you have to spot the deviant. And the way that this is done made me laugh out loud, because like, I don't know what else it could have been, you know, because androids don't sweat, you know, they don't fidget. And what it ends up being, the way to find the deviant is he'll look over just with his eyes, just kind of look his eyes over real quick, like back and forth, because he's on the side, and that's it. It was like that meme with the kid that's just kind of like looking up at the camera. It was very funny. But that deviant will attack you because he doesn't want to be found out. He'll be deactivated, memory probe deactivated, and you know, he gets away. He ends up stabbing you in the hand to like pin you to the table, and he rips out your therium pump, which is, you know, functionally your heart. And Connor starts to bleed out. His vision begins to get corrupted and blur. Imminent shutdown is coming. And I mean, all you can do is groan for Hank, but he doesn't really hear you. And you can die here. The timer is egregious. I don't know if you've ever done this, Nomad, but to lose this, you have to just sit there for 1.5 minutes and not do the like 2 or 3 button prompts to get out of here. It is wild, but I did it. And if you do it, you just die in Hank's arms. And his relationship meter goes down with you for that.
Yeah, anytime Connor dies, Hank's opinion or relationship with Connor goes down. Although I will say, I thought when Hank came in, because I did this too, my hunt for the Platinum Trophy for this game is complete, and one of my objectives is I had to have Connor die at every possible turn that he could take here. So this was one of them. But Hank comes in and he like pulls him up, and he seems so caring, even if his relationship with Connor is in the toilet. Like it was really weird. Like it was kind of touching in a weird way, but also a little disjointed. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's that tonal whiplash again. It's one of the inherent struggles with this format, with this genre.
You mentioned the deviant android and how his eyes will kind of move back and forth as a way to spot him. There's part of the flowchart where Connor does not find the deviant, and I just wanted to see how long I could go without him finding anybody. And you'll notice when you're talking to the other androids, it turns from his eyes going back and forth to his full-on head turning towards Connor as he's talking to the other androids. And you
really?
And you can see it in the background. The background's kind of blurred, but you can see it. Like, there is no way you don't find this deviant unless you try not to find it. I was laughing my ass off when I saw his head turning around him. Like, come on, can you be more subtle?
I must have, my first playthrough, I must have just fudged it and like just by chance threatened to deactivate him, because I didn't notice any of this during my first playthrough. It was only the second one. But you know, because I wrote in the notes at some point, like, I don't know if you can just like lose him or what. I thought the attack from him was scripted.
No, as long there gets to a point where you're able to do like violence, like torture or probe memory or stuff like that. As long as you don't do that to him, he will not attack you.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I thought that was a fun little fact.
If you succeed with these QTEs, you'll chase him out into the hallway. He'll grab a gun, and you have to protect Hank or what's the other option here?
You can grab a gun out of another police officer's holster and shoot the deviant down the hall. Or you can also rush towards the deviant while he's firing, I think to try to take him down with your hands. Why you would try that, I'm not entirely sure.
I could have swore it was protect Hank or something else. Either way, the deviant goes down here. Or no, Connor can die here as well, but he'll come back.
Yeah, if you decide to try to protect Hank, and I think it's quicker than the last time, but there's like that chance of survival X%, and it's actually pretty low. That made me want to protect Hank, and I was surprised to see Connor die this time, if that's the choice you make.
We're about to meet another major character in this next chapter here, Midnight Train. Kara, Luther, and Alice, they're going to arrive at Rose's farmhouse. Rose is a woman that lives here with her son, named Adam. And she kind of, she functions as the sort of shepherd to Canada, the Sherpa to Canada. This is the Underground Railroad sort of character, taking in deviants, housing them from the police, and getting them up north to safety. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Well, there's something that's more unfortunate, and we'll get to that in a second. We'll put Alice to bed, and Kara will go down to talk to Rose. There's a moment when you're putting Alice to bed where she'll ask Kara, why does everybody hate androids? Why can't we all get along?
Why do humans hate us? We didn't do anything wrong.
Maybe they're just scared. People are always scared of what they don't know.
It felt a bit much. I don't know. I might be being overly negative, though. But at the time, I thought it felt a bit overly saccharine.
I think I'm inclined to believe you just because of how Alice's character has kind of presented herself at this point. I never got the impression that she truly developed these feelings on her own based on the interactions that you have as Kara.
I think, I'll tell you what, man, I think this line exists for one reason, and it's because of the way it's worded. I think I wrote it wrong in my notes. I'm almost positive Alice says here, "Why does everybody hate us?" I think that's what she says, and I think that's why that's here.
I think you might be right. I can't remember it myself, but that sounds about right. But yeah, at the end of the day, it didn't feel quite right, and it just felt like it was just put in to add a little bit of, I don't even know what they were going for at this point. It felt very out of place to me.
Downstairs, you'll talk to Rose a little bit. You'll explain what happened, why you're here. And you can ask, like, why are you doing this? Why are you helping deviants? You know, what's your deal, Rose? And Rose's backstory is, like, this was stuff that her husband was doing. Her husband passed away, and this is sort of his legacy, was helping, standing for change, right? Positive change in the world. And now she lives there with her son. They sell produce. They're just getting by, and this is how they make their change in the world. But if you ask, like, why deviants? Why do you not fear us like the public does? Rose will explicitly draw the racial history of black people in America analogy. It is that explicit. Kara will say, "Why are you helping us?" And Rose's response is,
Why are you helping us? Most humans hate androids.
My people were often made to feel their lives were worthless. Some survived, but only because they found others who helped them along the way.
so it's not like I'm not just being mean and saying, like, yeah, he just didn't know. Like, he's doing this on purpose. He can't keep getting away with this.
Yeah, there is nothing more on the nose than this dialogue here. And I think I mentioned it last episode too. I think I mentioned this last episode as well, but I had just kind of resigned myself to, I'm just going to sit back and try to enjoy the ride at this point. This was very blunt. It hurt me physically in the face for how much on the nose it was.
Yeah, a lot of this can be just down to taste, you know, like, sure, I might say that I don't like something, but it's just a taste thing. There are a few things in this game that I think are objectively misses, things that they swung for and it just was not a hit at all. And this is one of them. And it just so happens to be a major theme of the game. This is one of them. I don't think this was a good choice from David Cage, but that is why she's doing this.
And not to besmirch history and how it happened, and I'm sure you and I both feel the same way, but yeah, from a writing standpoint and what this game could have explored, which is stuff that we've already talked about, I think that was the most disappointing thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. There are more androids here in the back, and one of them passes away. There's a couple, and the woman android dies in the arms of the male android. And it's a sad scene. You know, he's working through his emotions like a human would, right? It's showcasing that deviants are humans. Alice will walk down here, and you have to kind of, like, you have the choice to either just let her watch or kind of, you know, usher her away like you would a child. It's you have a handful of cold and distant choices in this last stretch of the game with Kara that are just bizarre and strange, inflicting PTSD onto this poor child.
Yeah, this is where Kara's story for me started to become very disjointed, and yeah, I'm not entirely sure why. Well, I have my theories based on something we'll discover about Alice, I think, in the next couple chapters, but why we're given these choices as the player, given the maternal figure that Kara is, and I'm assuming most of us are role-playing as, was baffling to me.
This chapter will end with a policeman coming to the door. They're doing door-to-door checks for androids because that's how bad this problem has got, which, man. Anyways, the cop does come. Kara has to, Rose had stepped out, so Kara has to pose as the mother here. And you have this short timer before you can answer the door, and you have to clean up the evidence of androids. There's the androids in the back, but there's also Luther and Alice. There's also Blue Blood in the closet. There's also a CyberLife uniform that's like by the fireplace. And you can choose not to clean any of this stuff up. But once the cop comes in, you know, you and Adam make small talk with him. And he asks if he could look around. And he's got a suspicion meter. This is just like the stress meter with the deviants before. And if it gets too high, you're in trouble. The first time I missed a piece of evidence completely, and he still just didn't really think anything of it. The second time, and then he leaves, by the way. If you pass this, he just leaves. But the second time, I deliberately didn't clean up any evidence. And one of the most comical things that happened was he sees the closet of blue blood, and he'll ask you about it. He'll say, "Why? I thought you said there are no androids here." You can tell him that there are, but if you lie and say there's not, he'll say, "I thought you said there are no androids here. Why do you have all this blue blood?" And you can literally answer, "I don't know. It's not mine."
Oh my God, that's awesome.
I'm just holding it for a friend.
I never deliberately got caught, but the one time, or the very first time, I ended up messing up at the very end. The cop goes by the utility room door where all the rest of the androids are hiding in the back, and a noise occurs, and you have 4 dialogue options. I can't remember them all. One of them is, "Oh, it's the washing machine." One of them is, "Oh, it's the dog," and then something else. I chose incorrectly here, and he opened the door, saw the androids. Luther came out to try to, I don't know, do something, and then he ended up getting himself killed at that point.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I think I had said it was the washing machine, and he just buys it and he leaves.
Yeah, I think that is the one you have to pick.
So then, regardless of how he gets alerted, it looks like Luther's going to die here. What happened in mine is Luther and Alice literally just open a curtain like in the pantry and just stand behind it, which it looks very funny. But he'll find them, and Luther gets shot there too. He does kill the policeman in the scuffle, but Luther gets shot in the stomach. What's weird is that Rose will come back after Luther gets shot, and she just does not react at all. She just says, "Okay, we're leaving. We're good to go to Canada now." And that's it.
She was a little bit more reactive when the scuffle happened by the door, or the utility room door, I think. But it was still almost as disjointed. It was just like, "Oh my God, what happened?"
Unless I'm misremembering, she completely did not react with Luther when he's like shot over by the back door by the pantry.
With the tonal whiplash that we've experienced up to this point, that would not surprise me in the slightest.
This next chapter sees Marcus and North, along with the rest of the Jericho crew and the androids, sort of. It begins with them recounting the broadcast and how everything turned out. You've got your broad strokes. North has her revolutionary views, and Josh has his pacifist views. Simon is generally closer to pacifist, but usually kind of in the middle. And you decide to make a big demonstration by going to the CyberLife stores across Detroit. There are 5 of them, and we're controlling one of our crew teams, to free the androids inside. Now, you can fail this in a lot of ways because there are a series of precautions. You have to disable drones. You have to deactivate the store alarm. You have to block the road. You have to do all these things. And if these steps aren't taken, you essentially have to bail halfway through and you fail. And North will remind you a lot here that the fate of the people is in your hands. And she will specifically say that if you fail. And maybe if you succeed. I only wrote down 1. But once you're inside, you sort of wake up the androids and you rouse them all. You convert them. And you have the choice of sending a message. This message can be violent or pacifist. I don't know about you, but it was not immediately clear to me what I could and couldn't touch, like without raising my violence level. You have a violence level, and that is how you will dictate whether you're pacifist or violent. Are you painting over windows or are you smashing them? Are you tipping cars over or just moving them into the street? Depending on what you do, your violence level raises. Some of these things, if you just interact with them, you'll smash them and your level goes up. Am I misremembering that?
No, not at all. It was very confusing for me until I played this through a few times to know what did what, but it's hard to understand what you're doing until you do it, and you have to make alterations on the fly. But yeah, the most frustrating thing for me was, unless it was like inherently obvious, like smash window, that's pretty violent, but there's also parking meters by the cars you can move or flip over. And I think it just says hack. I could be mistaken, but all I know is Marcus puts his hands up to him, and they all just explode, which kind of looks cool, but then your violence meter goes up. So if you're going for a pacifist run, that kind of may inhibit that a little bit. So yeah, it was hard to know what did what, and it's not on screen anywhere. There is a very stringent time limit here. You only get so much time to try to send your message, and I've played this chapter probably 5 times in all of my playthroughs now, and I have still yet to do everything that you're able to do in this area. There's so much to do.
But you have got your meter to 100 one way or the other, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot to do, but you can get it up to 100 pacifist or violence pretty easily. Now, that being said, if you don't, you'll fail. I mean, if you don't do enough, you will fail, which is what happened to me the first time, because I was so focused on trying to find what wasn't violent that I was just skipping a bunch of stuff, and I didn't get enough pacifist points, so we failed, and North berated me. And the public just reacts as if we were violent, which doesn't, what the fuck is that?
Interesting.
You can also literally just stand there until the time limit runs out, and then the scene progresses, and you're just like, oh, we didn't have enough time. It's like, bro, you were just standing there, dude. What are you doing? It's pretty funny. Once this is done, though, regardless of whether you do pacifist or violent, the police come, and from around the corner that you can't see, you hear a few shots being fired. And when you walk over there, the remaining androids are sort of surrounding the 2 cops. They've got them down on their knees, and you're given a gun. They basically ask you to execute them, dole out the justice that we deserve. The game, I don't think the game wants you to be violent. I think ultimately the game wants you to play as a pacifist, but it does want to tempt you here. What did you do your first time through here?
I tried my hardest to be as pacifist as I could in my initial playthrough, tried to play through the way, not just the game wanted me to, but the way I wanted to, truly, if I was in a situation. So I ended up sparing the police officers in this particular scenario, although I do think you're also given the option, you can either execute them, spare them, or choose not to decide and tell the androids to make their own decision, which I believe results in the police officers getting killed anyway.
Yeah, that's the one that I did not like at all. You can literally just give them the gun back and say it's up to you to decide and walk away.
It's up to you to decide.
And they shoot him. It felt very it felt cowardly to do that. It's like you're not standing for anything.
Yeah, I agree. It felt like a huge penalty, and I think that even happens if you decide to do a 100% pacifist. If you do a 100% pacifist demonstration in the street, they still shoot them anyway, I believe. So again, it's like, what have they learned from you? Nothing at this point. So I don't like that choice at all.
I don't think they do shoot these 2 cops because Hank brings them up in the next chapter.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, and he'll either be alive or dead, depending on what you've done. Now, if you do spare them, he says an eye for an eye makes the world go blind, which I don't like. That's too cliche at this point, I think. This game, I was thinking about this too, especially in the light of, everything that happened in 2020 and the rising attention to police violence in America. That has always been here, but now people are starting to really pay attention to it. And as we speak, Trump is actively, what for good or for ill, regardless of how you feel about this, he's actively trying to dismantle the government. And I think at this point, this idea of what does a nonviolent revolution look like at this time, I think is an interesting conversation to have. I don't personally want to have it on this show right now. Because we simply don't have the time, and it's also a can of worms, It is interesting to think about. I think when did this come out? 2018, the idea of a nonviolent protest, I think, was looked at as a little more idealistic, and now, and I might be totally off base with this, I do not claim to be the most politically in tune person. I think now a lot of people have lost the luster in their eyes and don't look at something like a nonviolent protest as being as virtuous as maybe people once did, at least not the folks that are really pushing for change like Marcus's group in here is. I don't know. It's a complicated issue. And who am I? I'm some jackass that bought a microphone and said, well, let's go. Nobody should listen to me for politics stuff.
Oh, and nor should they listen to me. I tend to not really bury my head in the sand per se, but I'm very disconnected with that kind of thing. But I think I agree. I think, like you said, I don't think it's quite held up as the idealistic way to go about a revolution, if you will, this nonviolent approach as it used to be. But I also feel like as a 40-year-old stepfather of two who works sometimes 50 hours a week in the office, I almost just feel like everyone just in general, regardless of the political climate, is just getting more angry about things or upset about things in general. And I think that plays a lot into it. But that's just me sitting at my desk spouting into a microphone as well. So it would be an interesting discussion one day.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it could have got really dicey. I'm glad that Cage didn't elect to make the story that he wanted to tell be rooted in violence. I do think that there is, I want to choose my words carefully. I do think there is a way to highlight that route in the lens of justice, and not gratuitous violence that would be impactful and would be truthful and would be righteous. I don't think that Cage and Williams could do that, but I also think that would be way too risky to do in a AAA video game anyway. I don't know what else they could have done here. And I'm glad, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that they went this route, because at the end of the day, I personally am somebody that wants more peace than not. There is a part of me, I've lost a lot of the extreme, I don't want to say extremist because I don't want to come off as I'm painting a side as being that. But, there's a particular fervor that I think a lot of folks get whenever they first become politically aware that drives them to one extreme or the other, like all violence or, all peace. And there are a lot of people that want serious change for the good, in my opinion, and want to go about it through extreme displays of violence, because that's the only way things will change. And there's a part of me that still agrees with that. But I think, and again, don't listen to me. I am a nobody when it comes to anything, especially politics. But I don't know. I think as I grow and as I think about things more and think about the world outside of this, I don't know that that's necessarily the answer. So while I do think it's a little bit simplified to say an eye for an eye makes the world go blind, we can't do this. I do think that's a bit simplified. I am glad that they went that route. Who knows, man? I just might cut this. I get very antsy about being political on this show sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes I really do. Maybe, who knows what of this will make it into the final cut.
Even if it doesn't, I agree with you a lot, and I have a hard time articulating some of this stuff myself, because I can only go by what I feel in terms of what I know is right, what I feel is wrong, and how I feel I would go about that myself. And I respect those that want to choose a pacifist approach, and I think I understand those that want to take a violent approach. And whether or not you agree with one extreme or the other, I guess, is a choice that you're going to have to make yourself, and that's going to determine whether we go one way or not as a society at large. So, it's hard to talk about, but it's worthy work, as a former boss of mine told me once before.
We talked a lot about this. What role does violence have in the revolution on the Pentiment episode? Because there's a point where this happens. They go into more detail. That's a Pentiment, by the way. I don't know if you know this, Nomad. Pentiment was written by Josh Sawyer, who did New Vegas. So very good dialogue, very good storytelling. And they dive into this, I think, a lot more nuanced partly because it's rooted in reality, with class struggle in the 1500s, 1600s with the church. And there is a new father that is, exactly his views change once he has his child. And he's like this. This puts things into a perspective that you simply cannot understand without this life experience. which is something that, when folks like you say that, it's like, yeah, there's a part of me that cannot argue against that. I simply can't. It's interesting. Go back and listen to that too. Spec Ops The Line. Geez, we're turning this episode into a big billboard. Spec Ops The Line, Pentiment, and then come back here. One thing that I'm not afraid to say that is now somehow political is that Elon Musk fucking sucks. And I say that because we're about to meet a sort of Detroit in-universe version of this guy. In Chapter 25, meet Komsky.
If that's not a good segue, I don't know what else is.
Yeah, dude. What a shitbag. This chapter, Hank and Connor drive up to visit Elijah Komsky, the founder of CyberLife, an AI grad from Colbridge. He created Chloe, who is our start screen android, the first android to pass the Turing test. Hank really don't like it too much if Connor dies and comes back here, because Connor will already be there. When you're driving up in the snow, you see Connor just standing there. Hank don't like that. No, sir.
It's probably one of my favorite instances where Connor comes back and Hank sees him. I can't remember the exact dialogue, but it just ends with Hank saying, "Fuck you," and walking past him.
Yeah.
My predecessor was unfortunately destroyed, but CyberLife transferred its memory and sent me to replace it.
You died in my arms. And now you're back here as if nothing happened. Fuck you.
There's another shock at the door. The android that answers is Chloe. It is the android from our start screen. Do you put any stock into this? Do you think this is significant at all?
I don't think so, really. It was an interesting shock when she opened the door because you instantly make that connection. Oh, this is the android I see anytime I start the game. So there was kind of that, but I felt more just curious what it meant, even though it didn't really amount to much. So no, I don't think it was for anything major.
I've seen some fan theories online that suggest that this game is all just an elaborate story from Komsky because of that. I don't buy that. I really don't. Do you? My personal take on this, what I bet you is the reason behind this, is I bet Cage wanted to have Chloe on the start screen so that when he brought her in game, it made us feel more attached to the goings-on and what is about to happen.
You know what? That's probably spot on because, yeah, given what we're going to be faced with here momentarily, it influenced a choice that I made quite heavily.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what he was going for. We also see in here something interesting. We see a photo of Komsky with Amanda, the woman that Connor's been meeting up with in his little mind palace.
Very peculiar.
We get a gem of a line from Hank, too. He says, "So you're about to meet your maker, Connor. How's it feel? Sometimes I wish I could meet my maker face to face." Again, really interesting. This idea of an android's view of creationism and what is effectively their god. I'm not going to fault them for not going there, but I would rather read about that, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I will say I wish we would have gone a little further with this idea, but again, it's just another one of those ideas where we just window shop right past it. But still, these dialogue options here in this moment, I thought were really cool.
So Komsky is in the next room. It's filled with a pool that is, the water in the pool is red, from lights. I don't know why that is. I've never seen that before.
I have a theory about that.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if this is true. I don't know where I heard this. This isn't my original thought, just to put that out there. But my thought was swimming pools generally are blue, right? Or have a blue liner, water's blue, that kind of thing. I wonder if Komsky made it red just because blue is the color of his android's blood. Maybe just to try to, appease them in some weird way, a very conscious choice to make it seem like he's not swimming around in their entrails, because there are a couple Chloes in this room as well, not just the one. But I don't know how deep that goes, but I thought it was an interesting theory.
That kind of goes against his views on android deviancy that we could find out here, though.
That is true. So yeah, it's not my favorite reason why that is, but it's the only one that made somewhat of sense.
He's modeled after the tech bro wonderkind that was popular in the 2010s, late 2010s, before guys like Elon Musk became absolute shitheels. This was a popular archetype for a couple of years, and that's what he is. Speaking with him, there are a total of 3 Chloe androids in this room. Speaking to Komsky is like talking to somebody that just finished a freshman philosophy class, I Am Deep 101. He doesn't really answer any of your questions, but he gives surface-level musings about how androids are superior to humans, and questioning Connor, what do you want? What is your desire?
Deviants. Fascinating, aren't they? Perfect beings with infinite intelligence, and now they have free will. Machines are so superior to us. Confrontation was inevitable. Humanity's greatest achievement threatens to be its downfall. Isn't it ironic?
He's the archetype of a detached from society and from their morals type of genius, basically. And he wonders aloud if androids can feel empathy, which is a good question. And he administers what he calls his Komsky test. He gives Connor a gun. He puts one of the Chloe androids on her knees in front of him and says, you can shoot her or not. If you shoot her, I'll tell you everything I know about one question. He's playing weird game master. He says, ask me one question, I'll tell you everything you want to know. But if you choose to spare her, you not only prove that you are deviant, but I won't give you any answers you're looking for.
Yeah, this was a very interesting spot to be in, and I think, looking back, of all the choices the game presents you with, this was the one that I had the easiest time making, but also the hardest time deciding, too, if that makes sense. Like, I felt very uncomfortable being in this position. I was very intrigued by this proposition at the same time, but for me, there was only one clear choice, which I think you probably made as well.
Well, if you've platinumed the game, you probably had to do both, didn't you?
I did. But still, my initial playthrough, I absolutely chose not to shoot her here. And it's almost the same reason that Connor eventually gives Hank near the end of the chapter. Like, you're looking into this android's eyes, you see this visage of a young, beautiful woman, and whether you feel like it's an android or not, it was something that even me as an actual person would have a hard time doing, even for the sake of my mission. And even then, depending on how you play as Connor, at least in my first playthrough, was well on his way to deviancy in and of itself. I'm questioning my mission already. I'm trying to figure out what I really want for this character and even myself. There was no way I was pulling the trigger here.
Well, what it's playing on is it's playing on our pattern-seeking brains, right? Because we see her take the appearance of a human, and that is ultimately, I think, the driving factor for a lot of us. Had this test had 2 tiers to it, where there was another android that was stripped of skin, like with Marcus at the broadcast, I think this would be it would certainly be a more complete study, but it would give more feedback into what Komsky is looking for. But I agree with you. I didn't shoot. That's what David Cage wants too. That's why he puts Chloe on the start screen. He wants you to really feel the weight of the actions. And fine, okay. What I don't like about this, though, is when you don't shoot, Komsky will say, okay, you failed the test. You're a deviant. How curious. he does the classic Twitter meme, curious. The Cyberlife's last hope of eradicating deviancy is himself a deviant. He gives you a very on-the-nose dialogue about a war coming, and, you'll have to choose a side. I can't imagine having to choose between these 2 evils.
A war is coming. You'll have to choose your side. Will you betray your own people, or stand against your creators? I wouldn't like to be in your shoes, Connor. What could be worse than having to choose between 2 evils?
And outside, Hank gets, he's struggling to accept why Connor didn't shoot. Connor gets defensive and emotional over the whole thing, too.
Why didn't you shoot?
I just saw that girl's eyes, and I couldn't. That's all.
You're always saying you would do anything to accomplish your mission. That was our chance to learn something, and you let it go.
Yeah, I know what I should have done. I told you I couldn't. I'm sorry, okay?
Well, maybe you did the right thing.
Now, that being said, you can shoot. You can shoot the Chloe, which Hank does not like this at all. Hank gets really pissed off if you do that. He'll ask you, like, what were you doing? And he'll say, like, don't you have any feelings, or something to that effect.
You shot that girl, for fuck's sake.
It wasn't a girl, Lieutenant. It was a machine that looked like a girl.
You put your gun against her head, and you blew her fucking brains out!
I did what I had to do to advance the investigation, and I'd do it again if I had to.
You're a lowlife. You don't feel a thing, do you? A machine, that's what you are. You're just a fucking machine!
Of course I'm a machine, Lieutenant. What did you think I was?
I thought...
Because, again, you aren't the friend that he needs, and he's struggling to accept that. Yeah, I don't know. In some ways, I think it's more powerful if you do shoot the Chloe.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's interesting, too. You do get a choice of a few questions to ask once you do shoot the Chloe. Kamsky is a man of his word, sort of. Only one of them really drives Connor's mission forward, but there are some interesting questions that you can ask, i.e., you can ask about the origin of RA9, which we hear and see a lot in the game previously, which is kind of this religious figure that the androids seem to be, I don't know if worship's the right word, but they seem to have a reverence for, and we still don't really understand, or at least the characters don't understand. I think we as the player kind of get an idea of what RA9 is supposed to be. But you can ask about that. You can ask about the origins of deviancy, which I thought was kind of interesting, although the answer to that question was about what I thought it was going to be. Basically, someone put a 1 where they were supposed to put a 0, and it just kind of cascaded from there, so it really truly is a manifestation of bad code.
And what's more interesting is that it seems to be contagious, is what he says.
Yes.
That whenever two androids meet, they sort of have to share some data, to interact with one another, and that's how it transmits. Which, in a way, kind of undercuts the whole idea of it, being of them achieving spontaneous intelligence. But he does amend it with or it could just be a spontaneous mutation.
Exactly. As soon as he put that at the end, I kind of rolled my eyes and I'm like, we were onto something. But
yeah, RA9, he just sort of muses about it like it's a religion, I don't know if it's real or not, kind of deal.
Yeah, and I think the last thing you can choose is you can just flat out ask, where is Jericho? And I'm not entirely sure how Kamsky has the ability or the know-how to tell Connor where Jericho is, but he has another Chloe come out, shares the key that Marcus had gotten quite earlier in the game, and bada bing, bada boom, you know where Jericho is.
Now, here's a question I have, and this is important for the end of the game. Can we figure out where Jericho is otherwise? Is this the first we're hearing of it?
This is the first time that we can get the location to Jericho.
But I mean, is this the first time Connor is hearing of this?
Huh.
What I'm asking is, you can get to the later scene where you're going over the evidence, and you can not have known about Jericho at all, but you still have the evidence interaction where you're asking, where's Jericho? So, is this the first time Connor mentions Jericho? How did we find out about this? I swear to God, I don't remember Connor learning about Jericho, which is a pretty big plot hole.
Yeah, now that you say that, I'm actually, I don't do this often. I'm actually going right to Google to try to figure out if there's an easy way to figure that out. And
because especially if you if you fail all of the deviant stuff, if you don't catch the Tracys, if you don't catch Rupert, you don't learn about Jericho. In fact, even if you do catch Rupert, you don't learn about Jericho because he jumps off the roof.
There is one instance he can learn about it. Back at the Stratford Tower, when you're controlling Connor and he's doing his after-action investigation, if you accidentally make the wrong choice and Simon gets shot and he has to be left behind and you choose not to shoot him as Marcus, there are a series of choices and actions you can take where Connor will find Simon and you can actually connect with him physically and download some of his memories. He will learn of Jericho there, but that is very dependent on the choices you make. And best I can tell, I don't think Connor learns the word Jericho at all up until maybe around the end of this part of the game. And Please, listeners, go to the Pixel Project Radio Discord and tell us otherwise, but I am fairly confident that he just all of a sudden learns what Jericho is, and I can't figure out where he finds it.
It's a criticism that I've heard before, and I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't just parroting wrong information. I'm pretty sure that no matter what, Connor will learn about Jericho, but I'm pretty sure that it can happen just for plot reasons. That is to say, he just magically learns about it. I'm pretty sure that can happen. Which, again, I mean, that's what happens whenever you try to do too many branching paths in a narrative like this.
Yeah, agreed. And I think just because for as much as I've played it up to this point, I never batted an eye at it. I've heard the word Jericho so many times in other aspects of this game, like it went right over my head.
All right, let's talk about Chapter 26, Freedom March. We've alluded to this one before. This is where Marcus and the Jericho crew start a march. They start off like in this subway station and they march out into the streets. And while you're doing this, you're amassing a giant following of deviant androids. It starts off by Marcus just touching them on the shoulder, saying, "Be free." Okay, didn't love that when it started, but whatever. But he develops as you amass more and more. He's able to just point at them and eventually just look in their direction, and they automatically turn deviant. And the backdrop to this, as you're marching, the scoring is angelic choir music to suggest that there's a sense of religious enlightenment and serenity. And it just did not land for me at all. What did I write here? That it was gauche and that it insists upon itself. Maybe I'm being cynical. I completely will admit to that if somebody were to ask me. But I mean, in terms of the music, that is to say. But in terms of just being able to point and look at androids to make them deviant, that's just absurd. That undercuts the entire cool thing about how they turn deviant that we talked about last time. You know, that emotional strife and turmoil, that breaking point, having to break through the barriers that we do with the wire mesh models with each of our three protagonists. And now we just bypass that because Marcus just looks at people.
Yeah, when I first played through this myself, I think I was more lost in just the pure spectacle of what they were trying to relay here. And I just dismissed the idea that this was happening because at this point, again, just tell the story you want to tell. But at the same time, I will say this, and I don't think I've sprinkled nearly as many positive things about this game as I'd like over the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, like when I'm editing this, I'm kind of shocked that you're not more positive because you came out of the gate saying that you really like this game. Am I a bad influence on you?
I mean, maybe, but no. I still do love this game, and I think when we get to the end of the episode, I'm going to sum up my thoughts. And I think at the end, I mean, still, I really like this game. I think people should play this game, and I think a lot of people are going to have some great enjoyment out of this experience. I will die on that hill, and I absolutely mean that. But at the same time, too, a lot of that, honestly, it just came from the idea of just tell the story you want to tell, Mr. Cage and fellow writers and staff. And for what this scene was and the music and the swelling and how it was presented from a visual standpoint, I liked the spectacle. It looked really cool, and I felt very sucked into this moment. So for what that's worth, I do like this chapter for this.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. It's framed in a way that really showcases how large of a following Marcus is amassing here. And they're all chanting the entire time. And you get quick, you get choices as to what you're saying while you're chanting. You can press buttons. Even whenever I played this for the first time and I was much, much warmer on it and liked it much more, I remember not liking this very much at all. It felt too much. Like I remember, I forget what book that I read, maybe it was Animal Farm in high school, and I remember thinking to myself, like, and yeah, it's like, oh, who is this guy critiquing George Orwell? Like, yeah, I get it. But I remember thinking, like, wow, he's really being obvious with what he's saying here. And there's nothing wrong with being obvious, right? There is nothing wrong with having your message be clear and distinct. Nothing wrong with it. But I think clear and clumsy are two different things. I think there's a difference between being loud and being ham-fisted with how you are suggesting your message. And I do think that this scene in particular is the latter. I don't know. If you disagree with me, if you agree with Nomad, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cops and SWAT show up at the very end, and you have the opportunity to be peaceful or aggressive. This can go a bunch of different ways here too. The way that I did it at first was I had everybody raise their hands, we're nonviolent, and I had Marcus walk forward to sacrifice himself. He walks forward, he says, we're not leaving. They say that they're going to shoot if we don't leave, and he says, we're not leaving, we're not going to be violent, but we're not leaving. And they shoot Marcus a couple times, and he will die here unless you saved security android John. Remember all the way back in the beginning? Security android John was saved, then he'll be in here, and he comes in at the last minute. He sort of jumps into the way and takes a few bullets for you, and your crew, Josh and Simon and company, can haul you back so you don't die here. So John steps in, he saves the day.
There's also another way this could go too. If for some reason you didn't bring John with you, but Simon is still alive and with you, Simon will be the one to sacrifice himself.
Oh, this is another Simon death.
Yes, this is usually how he ends up. Well, not usually, but this is one of the ways he died for me as well when I was trying to keep him alive, and I let John stay behind. It was very tragic for me in that moment.
You can also lead a charge against the SWAT team, which, I mean, if you fail all the QTs, yeah, you're going to die. But if you succeed in everything, this army of unarmed androids taking on this relatively equal in size, maybe a bit smaller army of SWAT teams, like you'll kill them all. And it's like, what? But that's not the worst one. Like, okay, I get it. That's just a blockbuster drama movie. Okay, we've seen that before. What's weird here is Marcus can end up, you can lead the charge and, you could take some bullets, you could get hurt real bad. And on the ground, you reach for a gun and you can shoot yourself with it. I can't make heads or tails like why Marcus would do that. That seems very out of left field for me.
Yeah.
That's not really anything. We get to see a little bit into Marcus's psyche and his motivations as we're shaping them. It just seems totally incongruent with the Marcus we know. But you can put a bullet into your chin here, and that's it for you.
Yeah, it was very abrupt the one time this happened to me because I purposely failed attacking the SWAT team here just to see what would happen, and I was very taken aback by it. Like, it's not like they're going to take you prisoners, so it's not like one of those, I'm just going to off myself so they can't take me back to take me back and do whatever they're going to do with me. Like, they're very clearly going to kill you anyway, so I thought this was very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's true. Die by your own hand, die by your own sword rather than the enemy's. I suppose so.
Yeah, it's still out of left field, like you said, but if nothing else, I will say if you do decide to choose to attack the SWAT team, and even taking just one more step back, I ended up my very first playthrough, I was pacifist to the core up until this point. This was the point for me as a player where I finally decided I had enough. And as they were starting to shoot everybody around me, I finally decided we're going to attack. And for what it's worth, and you can either be a fan of QTEs or not, or even fall somewhere in between, this is another scene where I thought it was really well done. It was very well shot, very well motion captured, and very exciting in that sense. Like, I was very committed to trying to get my people out of this mess, and just the choreography in the fights was really cool. So going back to the idea of when this game wants to be a blockbuster, it does really well, and I think if you decide to attack here, it does that very well. But again, this is kind of the game kind of nudging you. It wants you to be pacifist, but it really wants to tempt you with going violent, and if you take the bait here, if you will, the payoff is kind of cool. So I do like that.
I don't think, though, as much as Cage tempts you with the violent route, there's only one scene I can think of, and I mean, I'll just say this, I probably haven't seen all of them, but there's one scene that's coming up in a little bit, where the violent route is very clearly called the wrong way by Cage, with Marcus, actually. And I don't know, it's one that I'd never seen before. I just saw it before we recorded today. I was looking up different routes, because the ending, there's just so many different ways this can play out with like little variations. So we'll get there, but at least Cage doesn't like here, if you go violent, you know, it's, I don't want to say it's virtuous, but it's like they want you to feel justified, and Cage isn't trying to tell you that you're going down the wrong path, you know.
Yeah.
He's not saying that anger leads to hate leads to suffering.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez. We Star Wars 2 episodes in a row, huh?
Hey, I don't know what you're doing for your next episode, but I believe you can do a third.
Last Chance Connor, Chapter 27. You come back into the office with Hank. Well, you actually come to after a meeting with Amanda. Apologies, we're skipping over those. I mean, we kind of explained it before. A lot of them just sort of summarize what's going on. Amanda is, you know, a cyber life thing. We do learn, I mean, I suppose this is worth pointing out, you know, she is an AI. She is a program created by Komsky because she was his teacher at Coleridge when he was in school. And what she'll tell you is that, you know, he created her in Amanda's image so she felt familiar to him. So he had that bond with her. Almost like he was trying to help jumpstart a bond with a non-human, a sentient AI.
Interesting.
Curious. But you come to out of that in Jeffrey's office with Hank, the police lieutenant, the who's above lieutenant? Officer? Acting officer? Commanding officer? Hank's boss.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Head honcho. Hank is being put back onto homicide, and Connor is getting sent back to cyberlife. The FBI is coming in. They're taking over. Connor will be sent back. He'll be deactivated and analyzed to find out why he failed. And Hank is none too happy about this. They were so close, like as much shit. Remember in the last episode, I think it was, where Hank is screaming, "No fucking way. I'm not working with some plastic prick." Here, he's like, "No, like I'm invested now. We were so close to figuring this out. We're really onto something here." And Jeffries says, you know, this is going to be a civil war. This is out of the local Detroit police's hands, which, like, yeah, at that point, it probably is. He's probably pretty level-headed about this. I was on the friend path with Hank when I first did this. The two of you will talk a little bit, you know, and you start to get into the territory of some really interesting conversations. Hank will say,
"What if we're on the wrong side, Connor? What if we're fighting against people who just want to be free?"
They're not people, Lieutenant. They're defective machines.
They're not people. That's what we say every time we want to oppress someone.
What's really cool here, I liked this a lot, even though we don't really get to hear any more about this. If you're playing Connor as like a straight-laced kind of type, he'll push back if you say that they're not people. He'll say, "We'll be destroying a new life form." You know, this is as close as we get to the philosophical stuff that I've been wanting. It's really cool. I'm glad that there's at least something in here like this.
Yeah, and I'm glad they have the wherewithal to bring this up. But again, and maybe this is why I continue to be more negative than I planned to, but it disappoints me that we couldn't get more of this. Like, if you really take a step back too, and you look at Hank's progression from just absolutely hating Connor, hating androids, hating the whole idea of their existence, and now after the events that he's experienced, regardless of how you play Connor, he still feels kind of this way in some ways. He's had this turn, and I would have loved to have explored not just the turn itself, but really what got him there, what finally put him on this path. And it's just, no, we're just going to be on the side of the androids now because you unlocked the friend path on the flowchart, is kind of what I felt like. But that's not to take away from what's been said here, but that's what I feel like sometimes. Like, we were so close, but we let it go.
Sure. I mean, it's understood to be Connor's friendship, right? But again, you know, you might not be playing that way. you might be playing Connor as a bit more cold, and Hank still has this reaction. So that's what I can't remember how I phrased it, but like when you have these branching narrative type stories, when you want the player to have a hand in the storytelling, you get dissonant character motivations. You get characters that don't quite feel the same as they were before. It would be almost like doing a play where each scene has somebody else playing the same actor. Very cool experimentally. I would see a play like that. I think that has experimental potential. But here it's not appropriate to do that here. It feels a little more proof of concept, which I feel like is a little too mean to say, but I think it paints a little bit what I'm thinking. I don't know.
Nah, I agree with that.
Here's something that I learned today. In my playthrough here, Hank gives us the basement key because he wants Connor to go down and check out the evidence before the FBI takes it. Hank can just not help you here. He'll pat you on the shoulder and say, "Sorry, Connor, this is too big for androids. I'm doing this without you." I had no idea.
Yeah, that could absolutely happen. I think if I'm remembering the different tiers of your relationship, if Hank is hostile, he'll quite literally resign from the force and just say, "You're right, Jeffrey, this is beyond us. I'm done." Turns in his badge and he leaves.
And I think that's I don't want to spoiler too much, but I think that's how you get the ending where Hank actually does kill himself.
Correct. And it's pretty powerful in and of itself if we do decide to talk about it. But I believe if you're the relationship tier above that, where they're tense or warm, not quite friend level, but just kind of in the middle, he'll wish him luck, and there's really no hard feelings per se, but yeah, he won't help you. And if Hank isn't here, Connor's got to get a little creative with how he creates a distraction.
I like it when Hank is here, though, because he'll give you the basement key and he says, "All right, go down there. I'll create a distraction." And the distraction is Hanking running over to Perkins and just yelling in the voice of Mr. Krabs. And I really hope I can find audio that this isn't too muffled in the background. He yells,
"Perkins, you fucking cocksucker!"
And they just get into a big fight. Oh, it is so good.
I never not laugh when this happens, and I always make a point to just hang around as Connor for just a few seconds well spent, to see and hear this exceptional piece of dialogue.
He's just got one of the most unique voices I've ever heard. Just talk about a voice physically made for voice acting, for theater. It's incredible.
Yes.
What else has Clancy Brown been in? Big things.
Yeah, you know what? That's the thing about Clancy Brown. I see him all over the place, but I never quite pin him down with one specific role.
What was he in? He was in Shawshank Redemption, right?
Yes, he was. He was Captain. What was his name? Hadley, I think his name was.
Yeah, let's see what else here. Here's Lex Luthor in something. Uka Uka and Crash Bandicoot.
Nice.
Oh, and Dr. Cortex. Look at that.
Oh, that's right. He was in Starship Troopers as well. Sergeant
What a
Zim.
guy.
I know.
God bless him. You've got 5 minutes to mull through the evidence here. This is where Jericho is a thing you need to figure out. You need to find the location of Jericho because that's where we're going next. And this is where you might just not have that information, but you do actually have it because the plot needs to move forward, Yep. You've got 5 minutes. The way to solve this puzzle is you have to reactivate the TV station android, who is half of his torso is being kept here as evidence. It's really gruesome, but he's just kind of nailed to the wall. You reactivate him. His eyes are damaged, so he can't see, but he can hear and he can connect via, android things. You would then have to play the recording of Marcus giving his speech, emulate his voice to trick this poor android to giving you the location of Jericho. That's how you solve it.
Yeah, that is one way to solve it. That's generally the way that I solve it as well.
Oh wait, is there another way?
There are a couple ways. Another one that I did, which I didn't realize you could do until my last playthrough, because I chose not to find the deviant in the Stratford Tower, he was not there for me to do anything with, but I had actually...
Oh yeah, good point.
Yes, but I had actually killed the two Tracys in the Eden Club in this particular playthrough, So you can do a similar trick where you can trick one of the Tracys into giving you Jericho by mimicking the voice of the other one. But this one is so much more darker in that he'll actually... This Tracy can... I believe she can see this time, whereas the other android could not. You actually rip the head off one of the Tracys, hold it up in front of the other Tracy stuck to the wall, and you mimic her voice, and you just see Connor behind this Tracy's head just... It looks so menacing as he's trying to mimic her voice. Like, it's the same result, but it's so much darker.
God damn.
Yeah, and there is one more way, too, and I think you had mentioned this, maybe our first episode, when we're interrogating the android in the police station, and if we do everything correctly, he kind of favors Connor in a sense, and then he goes to leave, and then he mutters the phrase, the truth is inside, or something along those lines. And this can be recalled here if you're looking at this statue that you may have found in the bathroom stall of the very first deviant you find in Carlos Ortiz's house, I think it is. He's the android that beat Carlos with a baseball bat. Or I'm sorry, got beat with a baseball bat, then stabbed Carlos to death. He says the truth is inside, and that somehow prompts you to take this statue and break it in half, and then inside this statue is the key that you need to decipher the journal you could have found as you were chasing Rupert, the deviant that was in the pigeon house. So that finally comes back around, but that requires a lot of specific choices. So those 3 ways, I believe, are the ways that you can find Jericho here, which is a lot more than I thought.
That last one especially I've never seen before. That one almost makes the most sense.
Yes, agreed.
No matter how you do it, though, Gavin will come in. He comes in with his gun. He says he's been waiting since the day he met you to do this. And, you can tell him, like, look, I'm out of here. Like, you don't have to do this. But Gavin's going to try and fight you. It leads to a QTE fight. It's not a difficult one, and you can win it pretty easily, which will just leave him unconscious, and Perkins will come in after you've gone, finds Gavin unconscious, and then says, all right, we've got another one that we need to, take down, because now they know it's you. And we're approaching endgame here. We get to Crossroads. This is a longer one, a longer chapter. It begins with Kara? It begins with Kara, Rose, and crew, Luther and Alice. She'll give you directions to Jericho, and she says, find Marcus. We'll be on the last bus to Canada before midnight. And this is where Connor, too, we'll see shots of him looking for Jericho in a disguise. He's wearing like a beanie and like a little zip-up hoodie. He looks dapper. He looks good. He's looking around. Once you arrive to Jericho, Luther will again try and talk with Kara about Alice. And Kara just keeps saying, like, wait, we'll wait. Connor arrives, meanwhile. Marcus gets to talk with Kara for a little bit. He says, you shouldn't go to the bus to Canada right now. Detroit's under curfew. He says they're rounding up androids and sending them to camps.
Yep, we're going there.
I don't like that. That's a little that's live ammo that they have not instilled trust in me. They haven't earned the trust from me for that. But Kara agrees. And as you're leaving, Marcus will ask about Alice. He's like, why protect a human?
You said you're with a little girl, right? You know that humans hate us. Why are you protecting her?
She needs me. And I need her. It's as simple as that.
And this is important. Kara will say, this is our entire mission up till now. We're protecting Alice because, like, family transcends all of this, right? Alice means a lot because she's family. It doesn't matter, right? Race doesn't matter. Family does. And this is completely, immediately undercut. This made me so mad. And this is why I put at the top of last episode that little disclaimer that I did. Not a disclaimer, but I had to call out some minuscule detail. On the way back, Kara sees another Alice with an LED. And it turns out, this is the reveal, Alice has been an android all along. And we get a little flashback of Kara picking up that magazine in Todd's house, the one that the camera refused to let us see. It was a picture of Alice, like being sold on the cover, that model of android. So We don't know what happened to our Alice's LED, but Alice is an android. And Luther comes over and says, you've known this from the beginning. You just chose not to remember.
You knew from the beginning. You just didn't want to see it. She wanted a mom, and you wanted someone to care for. You needed each other. What difference does it make? Do you love her any less now that you know she's one of us? Alice loves you, Kara. She loves you more than anything in the world. She became the little girl you wanted, and you became the mother she needed. Forgetting who you are to become what someone needs you to be. Maybe that's what it means to be alive.
And it's made to be this emotional precipice for Kara of finding out that finding this out has now fundamentally changed her relationship with Alice, despite literally everything this character has been crafted from up until now. I don't know. I feel like if I'm given time, I could just yell about this game forever. And I don't want to be unfair, but like I have so many problems with this writing. I want to hear from you, Nomad. Like, do you remember how you felt the first time you saw this, or even this past time? Like, what's your take on this?
Yeah, the very first time I got to experience this, I remember pretty well what I felt, which was just straight confusion. And I don't know, and I still don't know truly what it was that we as the player were supposed to feel in this moment, given everything that we had experienced up to this point. Like, we're the mother figure now, we're family now, and we're taking care of this little girl. That is our mission. Why do I have to decide to care one way or another whether she's an android or not? Like, I don't know what this is supposed to mean for me. If she's an android, that's great. You're one of us anyway. I still feel as close to you as I ever have. If you're a human, I feel the same way. Like, I just didn't know what to feel here. And of course, I think at one point you're given the option as Kara to hug Alice after Alice says something nonchalant, or you can quote unquote remain distant or something along those lines. Like, of course you're going to hug her. Of course you're going to continue down this path. So why are you even presented with this choice at all? Like, it just, of all the critiques I think I've had, this is the one I've had from day one that just confuses me. And I tried to talk it out with my wife and have like a really good conversation, and she was just as confused as I was. So I'm like,
would you still love me if I were an android, honey?
Right. Like, it made no sense. So I'm just like, I'm just going to press circle because that's what I truly feel. I want to hug this little girl because that's all I've done this entire game. So let's move on. And the last 15 minutes of my playtime has been the most confusing it's been.
This makes sense, and this is me being cynical and bitter, which I was when I wrote these notes. I know I was. But I feel this way, and I don't mean to disparage people that like this game. I truly don't. There's nothing wrong with enjoying something, with turning your brain off and enjoying something. And I think that's the only way this reveal, and specifically, it's not even the reveal, it's how Kara reacts. I think that's the only way this can be meaningful and enjoyed. If you're only doing what only feeling what David Cage wants you to feel, which, up until now, he's just been telling you what to feel. He's having characters say what you should be feeling. And here, he waits on that with the reveal and he lets you decide. And that's how it's going to be resonant with you. But I mean, this is so bizarre how Kara reacts. Like, suddenly she's not sure if she even cares. It's funny that you mention, of course, you're going to hug her, because most people would. Of course they would. There shouldn't have even been like this conflicted moment with Kara, right? But you can choose to be distant, and it is absolutely horrifying. It's unbelievable. I mean, for story reasons, because this is just not who Kara is. But I think this might be technical weirdsies with the mocap tech. I watched this again today just to be sure, and no, it just looks very strange. Kara will, if you choose distant, Kara looks at Alice. Alice will say, "What's wrong, Kara? Like, we're still going to be together forever, right, Kara?" And Kara will look at Alice like she's a fucking hideous freak.
Oh my God.
Like palpable disgust. It's gotta be like weirdness with the mocap stuff. Like it's gotta be, because it's so jarring that Kara would look at this this little girl that was her surrogate daughter for this whole game with just immediate disgust upon learning that she's an android. I don't know, dude. I don't know. I don't know who would choose this if you're not going for like completionist stuff. You can. By the way, I don't know if you did this. I forgot to do this, so I cannot speak to this. There's an entire route where you can get separated from Alice at the very end here and like get sent to a junkyard and stripped of your entire like human skin. It's horrifying. Have you done this before?
I have, and it was purely just to try to fill out the rest of the flowchart, and I've only ever done it once, and I think I will only ever do this once. It was quite uncomfortable, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, but if you're most people, you're probably going to say, no, of course, you're going to hug Alice, and she's still your daughter. What does it matter? The Jericho leads are going to speak here. The situation seems totally dire, without hope. That crew leaves, and it reveals that Connor is not only right around the corner, but that the FBI and SWAT are moving in as well. And we get one more meeting here with Connor and Amanda. And she explicitly tells him, we need Marcus alive. Like, this is your last mission. So how this went for me was Marcus coming into the room, Connor going into the room with Marcus, gun drawn. And Marcus asks a series of leading questions to Connor about his consciousness, his empathy, his humanity, that he believes, this is what I wrote, I'm being a bitter son of a bitch here, that Cage believes his audience won't ponder unless he just asks them himself.
You never have any doubts. You've never done something irrational, as if there's something inside you, something more than your program. Have you never wondered who you really are? Whether you're just a machine executing a program or a living being, capable of reason. I think the time has come for you to ask yourself that question. It's time to decide.
Haven't you ever wondered who you really are? Do you think you're just a machine? Join your people. And then you get the choice to become deviant. You as the player. Presumably not Connor. You as the player just get to choose what happens. But this goes against against Marcus's powers, right? Because Marcus can just look at people now and turn them deviant. What is going on here? This is a literal life or death situation for Marcus. So this makes sense. Now, if Marcus is dead, this is North here. Connor is interrogating North. Then it makes sense. Yeah, talk Connor into deviancy. But with Marcus, he's already been established as this mechanical messiah. I don't know. Like, all I could think about was I looked at an army of androids and turned them deviant. Why am I, potentially risking my life to change Connor?
Yeah, that didn't really set in for me until subsequent playthroughs. But what I think the game was going for, and I think I appreciate, is I do like that the player is given the choice to become deviant or not. Although I think I would rather have had it happen on its own. But the reason I say that is, if you're playing Connor as the deviant type, if you will, befriending Hank, doing things against your mission, that kind of thing, I like that you're given the choice to make your own decision that you want to do this, just because the game has been leading up to this, and you kind of get that payoff as the player. So from that perspective,
sure.
Yeah, so from that perspective, I did appreciate that. And then it's kind of cool when the game gives you the option. You see the dialogue option, press circle to remain a machine, and then the little lock undoes itself and you see become deviant. And just having that choice there, it's kind of like, yeah, this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted to become. Mm-hmm. And I like that messaging. But again, the more I play the game through and the more we've discussed it, you and I, deviancy in and of itself, it's not so much a choice. It's kind of enacted upon you because of all these stressors and moments of high emotion. And then Marcus having his superpowers, if you will. So the choice to become deviant here did feel out of place the more I really dove into the nuance of the story. But in the moment, okay, I like it for what it is.
A lot of it does come down to that Cage wants to create drama, right? Like the muddying of what deviancy could be happened because Cage in the moment wanted to create drama. So if we're thinking of storytelling, and this is me borrowing from my how I used to teach music to my students and how I used to play myself. If we're thinking of storytelling as a whole, like a big arc, we've got a global sense of drama, and then we've got local drama. The global drama is from start to finish. Like that's how the drama is shaped out. But in that, we've got smaller hairpins of drama going on, the scene to scene. And Cage was too focused on the scene to scene, the local drama, that the global drama is now misshapen and lumpy. It's incongruent with itself, and that's the danger of stuff like this. That's the danger of this kind of narrative where you let the player be the storyteller. Sometimes the player is not as good of a storyteller. You know, that's why they're not the ones writing the game. But you know, that's a cynical take on this genre. I'm not like decrying this whole thing, but that's what I think happened. If I had to make a declarative statement. Finishing out this chapter, though, there's like you do this as Kara. There's a barrage of escape scenes and QTEs to get out of Jericho because the FBI is moving in, and eventually you detonate it with Marcus's directive. Marcus gets a bomb planted, and a lot of people can die here. In my playthrough, North got a bullet through the head.
Ooh.
Here, she got caught by an FBI agent, and I chose Marcus because, like in my first playthrough, the two of them weren't lovers, so I just did not have Marcus save her, and this is where she died.
Oh, geez. I tend to save her whether I go down the lover path or not. If for no other reason, this entire section is so rife with QTEs, and again, I'll go back to if you just...
It's very exciting, yeah.
Yes, very, and I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. Like, I really enjoy being able to, like, I'm not a QTE expert or anything, but I know my way around a quick button press. And I do like how the game will incorporate not just the buttons, but the rotation of the thumbstick and stuff like that. And like you really have to be pretty in tune with what's going on, but I think they do it well. And I like if you go and try to save North, Marcus will grab a piece of steel to use as a shield, and then you whip it like a frisbee, and it's very John Wick-ish. Like it looks great. So if for no other reason, I save North just to see that.
Yeah, total action movie.
100%.
And I like the way they do quick time events in this game too. It's not like they don't slow-mo like everything down like they do in some games like Mortal Kombat or oh gosh, Bayonetta doesn't do that, does it? Can't remember.
Never played, but don't tell anyone. That's a huge gap.
Really?
That's a huge gap on my resume.
It's a lot of fun. I used to be kind of put off by the whole like aesthetic of it.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't mind the aesthetic, but when I played it, it's a very good action game. It's very technically exciting.
Nice.
That ends this chapter. This next chapter is shorter. This is what I was alluding to earlier. So if Carl is alive, remember Carl, or Painter Carl? Marcus goes back to visit him, and his health is like deteriorating. He's got a new live-in android, and I mean, this conversation can go a bunch of different ways, but you'll speak to him and ask for advice on how to proceed. Depending on, I mean, some of these conversations are a little by the books, by the numbers than others, but I forget why I put a pin in this earlier, but I do remember. If you are playing as a righteous justice kind of Marcus, like violence is the only way that we're going to get change and revolution, Carl will condemn you for it here. He'll say that he sees too much hatred in you, which, as we all know, leads to anger, leads to hate, leads to suffering. We all know this. And he'll say he sees that too much in you. And Marcus kind of justifiably blows up at him. He says, like, you know, they don't respect us. Like, how else are we going to get change here? And you yell at Carl. You yell at Carl so much that he dies.
Really?
Yeah. Had you not seen this?
No, I've played some. I've had a couple violent playthroughs with Marcus, but I never felt compelled to take dialogue options that would have him do this. Wow, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, they don't, like, I thought that they were going to have the live-in android be like, he's dead and you killed him, but they don't. Like, they don't take it that far. Yeah, it's really, but it's the only time in this game that, or again, it's the only time that I've personally seen in this game where they objectively say, hey, righteous justice is maybe, cut that out,
Right.
If Carl's already dead, you just go to his grave and you sort of reflect, and you bump into Leo, but the two of you don't really speak.
Yeah, I think I enjoy being able to talk to Carl here, but the scene itself is pretty quick and it doesn't really change anything, but it does give Marcus a little bit of time to shine depending on how you're playing as him, so it is a nice little insert.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. This is really just gearing you up for this last chapter here, Battle for Detroit. And this is a doozy. This is a long chapter, and I apologize in advance. Like, remember at the top when I said I've only seen so much of this game, Nomad's only seen so much. Together we've seen most of it, but we might miss some stuff. That's going to happen here because, like, there's just so many little variations. There are lots of great playthroughs on this on YouTube. Check those out. Also, the way that I structured these notes was just chronologically, like as it happened in the game. That's what I took notes on. In retrospect, this is the Quarry problem all over again, where we're going to be jumping between different POVs like a ton back and forth. Would have just been a lot easier to just do Connor, then Marcus, then Kara, or, in whatever order, just all in a row. You know what I mean? So it might jump around a little bit.
Yeah, a little jarring here. Slightly, unless you have some characters that didn't make it, so that's a way to keep it simple.
Yeah, just get Kara killed and you shave off like 7 hours of playtime.
Exactly.
It starts with President Warren giving a press conference, and interestingly, you get to choose what questions she answers. She'll kind of give the lowdown of what's going on. There's a curfew. Androids are being rounded up to camps and being sent to be exterminated. I don't even want to get into the implications of this. But in my playthrough, even like public opinion was supportive at this point. I'm pretty sure. If it's not supportive, it was like one tier lower. But no matter how high it is, she is against it. So she is like, technically, she's an antagonist here.
Yeah, it's very brunt. And some of the questions are pretty interesting, and you don't get to ask them all. So you almost have to play through this particular scene several times to ask all of the questions that are available. Some of them are very brutally answered by President Warren. I think if you do bring up the camps, one of the questions that one of the reporters has, she shuts that shit down immediately, doesn't even want to make any sort of connection to what that could possibly mean based on our history, and moves right along. Like, it's
oh, no shit.
Oh, yeah. She shuts it down and wants to hear none of it.
That kind of makes me even more mad, though, that like they knew what they were doing.
Yes.
And chose to ignore it.
Yeah, I can't remember the dialogue, but it's very on the nose. Hey, this is very reminiscent of something that happened in the past, and a lot of people are upset by it. What say you? And she says, nope, has no connection whatsoever. We're just destroying machines.
Oh my God. Dude, this is what I mean, though. Like, I think I understand what they're saying. The intention behind it is these aren't people. But you cannot play with live ammo like that and not engage with it. You can't. That's too serious of a subject in American history and world history to just say, like, nah. It's what did he say? What did we say in episode 1? Like, he's like, if that's what you want to take away from it, that's fine. But this is just about androids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Give me a break, Buster. If Connor's alive and infiltrating Cyberlife, this is where it happens. You get onto an elevator up in Cyberlife. You pass the clearances. You get into an elevator with 2 guards. You do a QTE fight to take them down. And you can die here. I mean, it should be said. And Connor doesn't come... I don't think Connor comes back from this one, right? Presumably not if he dies in the warehouse.
Yeah, at any point, if he dies after he decides, or you decide as a player to become deviant, it's one and done.
Yeah, but you don't have to die here. And I hope you don't, because it leads to a cool confrontation. Again, we're jumping around a little bit. The next scene is Kara and Alice running to get to the bus. There are army members everywhere shooting androids on sight. Like, just no questions, just shooting. And you have to do a series of hiding sections to avoid being seen. Luther is here with Jerry. they're about to be executed on the spot. And I don't know who would choose to not save him. Like, you have the choice, but of course I saved him. Like, Luther is great.
Yeah, it's very easy to complete the rescue here as well. It's like one button prompt I think you have to press after you slide into cover. So yeah, you're always going to save Luther.
So the three of you, Kara, Luther, and Alice, you get to a checkpoint on the way to the bus, and you have a choice. You can risk it with your passports or take a detour that the game tells you will take 1 minute longer than it will take to reach the bus. So obviously, you take the checkpoint, right? Because otherwise, you're going to miss the bus. Which I didn't do. Did you take the detour?
It's funny, of all the times I've played this game, I have never taken the detour. It's something I've been meaning to do and just never did it.
I think I looked it up, and I think you do miss the bus. I mean, and it tells you will. I don't want to say that for sure, but I think that's what happens.
I believe that, because I do know if you do go to the bus stop, you still have the potential not to get on it anyway, so there is another path to get to Canada, so I could see that.
They get you with a good fake out here. Like, as you go through you've got your fake passports, and you give it to the guards, and as you're leaving, they say, "Hey, wait." And Luther is like communicating with you telepathically because Android stuff.
Yep.
Because it's convenient now. But he'll say, we've got to do something now. We've got to shoot them before they shoot us. And they give you 2 chances to choose whether to shoot or not. And if you ignore them both times, all they do is say, "You dropped this," and they give Alice back her glove. I like that. I like that fake out.
Yeah, it was a good one. I never shot, but I almost did, just because Luther, who's always been very even-keeled, comes off as kind of the wise man of the three of them. He's like really wanting this to happen, so part of me is like, he's seeing something I don't. So I almost pulled the trigger here, but never did.
Yeah, this was good. It was a good fake out. You trust him. Why wouldn't you? We're at the final protest with Marcus and co. Jumping around. This is Cage, like one of Cage's tricks is to use multiple camera angles to imply cutscenes while we still control our characters, and that's happening here. It's good. Like, this is it's one of his, what do you call it? Not cliches, but like one of his techniques that he uses. It's good. But this is a peaceful march. The army does open fire and just kill a few of you, but you keep moving forward. But it cuts back to Connor, like, real quick. I told you, it's just going to jump back and forth.
If I could, before we move on, I don't know if we touched on it in the previous chapter, but there is a pretty substantial choice that you have to make as Marcus, and you mentioned a peaceful march here. You can decide as Marcus to lead a full-blown revolution and try to take one of the android camps, I think is what your target is. You can try to take it by force. So this is...
Oh, you're kidding. Did I miss that?
Yes. So this is now like the final, are you going to be violent or are you going to be pacifist choice? So the battle for Detroit, from Marcus's perspective, can go one of two ways. The peaceful march, which I ended up doing my second playthrough. I did mention before when we were in the Freedom March that I was finally pushed to violence and I ended up attacking the SWAT team. This is where, even though I wanted in my heart to remain pacifist, I ended up leading a revolution here. So we can talk to that later, but I've also played the pacifist route here, which I think is the more, I'll say, interesting, just for how narratively this can go. But I'll fill in the gaps for the revolution where it makes sense. But yeah, we're given that final choice here.
Oh, that's interesting. I can't believe I forgot to take note of that. Now nobody's going to take this seriously.
It's okay, Rick. I got your back.
I'm gonna get negative performance reviews. Connor gets ambushed by guards in the warehouse because the elevator had a camera, because why wouldn't it? So you have to do more QTEs to take them down. Connor is now going to convert an army of androids because plot reasons. Like, now Connor can do it.
Yes, that confused the hell out of me too. Like, he looks down at his hand, which the humanoid flesh retracts from, and you see his android hand. And I remember thinking to myself, how do you have this power? This is Marcus's specific plot device because he's being built up as this messiah. How do you have it now? Like, I love Connor to death, don't get me wrong, but it's just like, whatever. Plot, let's keep going. Even
if you gave them the benefit of the doubt and said, okay, it's because Marcus turned himself, that would functionally mean that wouldn't that mean that everybody that Marcus turned has the same ability?
Yeah, you would think.
I don't know. I don't know why this is here. I wrote that I'm not sure if this is a forced failure, but I failed. Like, the failure is I mean, the button press is just one button, and I failed it.
Yeah, it is a force fail here.
Okay. I was gonna say, but then another Connor model comes out, and they have Hank at gunpoint. And I wrote, "Are they really gonna do this?" Stay tuned, because we have a cut back to Kara for a second.
I laughed this hard because that is exactly what I said to my wife in our first playthrough. I just looked at her and said, "We're gonna do this, aren't we?" And then, yep.
Yeah, I looked it up because I was like, surely this has like, you could trace back to what movie this happened in first. And I don't know, maybe you can, but it's so overdone that it's just its own trope at this point.
Yes.
I don't know. You're back at the bus stop with Kara. The bus is full and you can only get in if you have tickets. Conveniently, there's a couple that talks to you and they drop their tickets and you pick them up. You choose to either keep them or give them back. You get 2 chances to return them, but I say too bad, chumps, and I keep them. We're getting on that bus.
My very first playthrough, I ended up feeling guilty enough I gave them back, and I had to find my way to Canada another way, literally cross a river, but I don't remember much.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that how you get on that barge that you can get separated from with Alice, right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah, but it was the very first time I played it, and I don't remember much about it. But yeah, I was guilted into giving the couple back the tickets. I couldn't keep the tickets, but you bet your ass, any subsequent playthrough, sorry.
If you're going for the truly like bad ending, that's what you would want to do, though.
Yes.
We had a quick scene with Marcus and the Jericho group. If you did the pacifist, I don't know if this happens if you did the revolution, but Perkins will come down and ask for Marcus. He just walks out into the open. And if you hear him out, he says, you're all that's left. We ask him about the other camps, and he says, no, they're gone.
What happened to the other androids demonstrating in the camps?
Unfortunately, there were no journalists around to help save them. You're it. You're the last remaining deviants.
So they were exterminated. There are journalists all around this camp here, so that's why we're not getting shot on the spot. Shady shit, FBI. And he gives you a deal. He says, surrender, and, you won't be killed. He doesn't say anything about, justice or amnesty. No, we won't kill you. So of course you refuse it, right? And then you do one last speech.
The humans are about to launch an attack. And we will show them. And we are not afraid. If we must die today, then we will die free.
There are some differences to this depending on some choices you've made too, subtle. I do know if you are North's lover at this point, if you decide to go down that conversation path, he does specifically call her out in conversation. Hey, you seem to be quite attached to that one. Take my deal and you two can live and be happy together. There is just that little bit if you happen to be North's lover. But I do know, I've not done this myself, if you do accept his deal for some reason, he will kill you, and the game will end there for Marcus.
Oh yeah, of course he will. Like, that's so foolish to think that he wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah, that's, honestly, that's the just desserts for, yeah, I was going to say being spineless, but whatever.
And I will say, just quickly, if you're doing the revolution and you're working your way to the camp, which is, by the way, probably one of my favorite scenes in the game if you decide to go it, because again, it's great action, it's done incredibly well. You actually have to lead your troops into battle, and you'll see groups of them, and you can tell them to either charge, hold back, lay down covering fire, and the game gives you kind of a ticker of how many of your forces you have left, so you can absolutely fail this by making too many bad decisions or failing QTEs. But it's a straight shot to the goal. There's no negotiation. You just mow everybody down. So in a sense, this peaceful approach is interesting from that standpoint because there are a little bit more bits of dialogue like this, so it depends on kind of what you're going for.
Oh, so it turns it into like a strategy thing?
A bit, yeah. Like, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't just a big, long QTE. Like, you come across instances where you're trying to fight your way to the camp, and the QTEs are actually done really well in that you actually have to hold your L1 button to draw your weapon and then press your R1 to actually fire the weapon. It almost feels like a cover-based shooter at this point, so the QTEs are done, I think, the best in this particular portion of the game if you decide to take the revolution path. but then you'll come up against machine gun nests, and you have to look around you, see what androids are kind of clustered together in pockets, and you can order them to lay down covering fire, look to your right, let's say, tell this other group, you charge the nest, and as long as they're laying down covering fire, your other team will go in and take out the nest. Like, it's not implied that you have to do it that way, but as you make decisions, you realize what they do with your troops, and you start to learn how to utilize them. Like, it's very interactive in that sense, so I really like taking that path, even though it kind of goes against what I usually do normally.
That is so fascinating.
Like, even if you decide to look it up on YouTube and watch someone just do it start to finish, even if you don't experience it, it's a pretty cool spectacle. Like, it's one of my high points of the game. I really enjoy playing through it. I love watching it. And again, going back to what Quantic Dream does best, it's this.
Yeah, there's I don't remember the name, but there's one really good playlist on YouTube that just has literally every possible variation like edited into one video. So like one chapter will have every variation, and it's got little like transition slides that'll tell you what's going on. It's really good.
Nice. I'll have to look that up. That's cool.
Those people are the heroes doing those kinds of long plays with no commentary.
Oh yeah, big time.
like there's what a noble YouTube profession. You're back with Connor. We're doing it. We're doing the movie thing. You have the option to save Hank with this false Connor that's got him at gunpoint, or sacrifice him. So of course you try and save him, right? A fight ensues, and it leads to a QTE fight with the two Connors. And I just wrote, God damn it, he's doing it. After there's a scuffle, and when Hank gets back up, he's got a gun, and he can't tell which Connor is the real Connor.
Get rid of him. We have no time to lose. It's me, Hank. I'm the real Connor.
One of you is my partner. The other is a sack of shit. Question is, who's who?
What are you doing, Hank? I'm the real Connor. Give me the gun and I'll take care of it.
Wouldn't you know it? And you start asking questions, like about what the two of you have been through together, because that's how this trope goes. Ask him only things you can know. But the thing is that the real Connor realizes he uploaded my memory. This is important, because the way to win this is Hank will ask, what's the name of my son?
My son, what's his name?
Anthony. Wrong choice, Lieutenant. I've accomplished my mission.
Here's the thing. If you know this, remember last time I said I purposely didn't learn his name at Hank's house? It's because of this. So if you learn it, there's a little, you have the option to say Cole, which is the right answer, and that's, you give his name and you explain why Hank hates androids.
Cole. His name was Cole. And he just turned 6 at the time of the accident. It wasn't your fault, Lieutenant. A truck skidded on a sheet of ice and your car rolled over. Cole needed emergency surgery, but no human was available to do it. So an android had to take care of him. Cole didn't make it. That's why you hate androids. You think one of us is responsible for your son's death.
Cole died because a human surgeon was too high on red ice to operate. He was the one that took my son from me. Him in this world where the only way people can find comfort is with a fistful of powder.
I knew about your son too. I would have said exactly the same thing. Don't listen to him, Hank. I'm the one who...
The way Connor answers this question is, your son's name was Cole. He died from an accident. It wasn't your fault. There was a doctor that was supposed to operate. He was unavailable. An android had to step in, and Cole didn't.
Well, not that he was unavailable. He was high on red ice, and that's why Hank hates the drugs so much.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to get to, and that's never mentioned up until this point. And then I forget exactly what Hank says in this moment, but he really presses on the idea that no, it wasn't an android that killed my son. it was this doctor that was high on red ice. And I didn't really know how to take that. Like, I love the moment for what it was. Like, Hank finally comes to terms, we finally understand what's going on, but, like, did he never hate androids the entire time and just hated this doctor that was high on drugs? Like, I didn't really know what angle we were going for here.
You have to do a lot of, like, optional looking into, like, environment stuff and reading the gallery models that you can unlock.
Yeah.
You know? And then, even then, it doesn't give you a ton of information, so you have to put it together in your own brain. It's just... For such a climactic scene at the very end of the game, this felt like a very bizarre turn. Like, you didn't really set that up. You know, you're trying to go for a spike whenever somebody was just passing you the volleyball.
Right.
You know? But here's the thing. So there are two things. One, going back to the choice. You know, Cole is the right choice. One, wouldn't the other Connor know that too if your memory was completely uploaded?
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's the obvious one. Two, let's say you did what I did and you didn't learn Cole's name. Cole's name is still an option. It's not even a locked choice. You can still say it.
Really?
Yes, it's one of the 4 choices. You just say Cole.
Huh.
There's no way.
That irritates me even more. like I can forgive the fact that we're doing the cliche movie scene and all of that, but that's really what took me out of this near the end of the game. And I think maybe it's because my wife and I just powered through this over the course of a weekend and we were just wanting to see this game finished at this point. But there's actually a question that Hank asks before he asks what his son name is, and he asks, "What's my dog's name?" Like, I would rather have that been the question that makes Hank figure out that Connor's the real Connor, right? Because maybe that's not in a database somewhere. How would the other android who has all of Connor's memories know the name of Hank's dog, potentially? Like, it's just...
Yeah, like Hank's son, he would have taken a leave of absence from work, and everybody would have known about that.
Yeah, he's in a database somewhere, that kind of thing. So, like, I can forgive the movie trope. I can just accept the fact that we're doing this. And for what it is, I think the scene is done well enough that it's a very tense scene. Again, Clancy Brown and everybody here does a fantastic job with this scene, and I think it's really riveting for what it is, even if it's cliche. But as soon as the answer was, Cole is my son, and I'm the only one that knows that because I said the words, "It's not your fault, Lieutenant," that's what gets you over the finish line? Come on.
And even if you can give a pass to, like, why doesn't the other Connor know that if he has all of my memories? Even if you give that a pass, it's like... Then Hank goes on to say, you know, it's actually, like you said, Nomad, it's actually the drugs, not the androids. That kind of diminishes all of the character growth that Hank had up until now, right? Like, going from somebody that called Connor a plastic prick every 2 seconds to now seeing him as a friend. It's that kind of gets crushed because now it's like, well, you weren't really working through one of your problems. You were just, you know, ignoring the crux of the thing.
Yeah, it was disappointing.
You can choose not to save Hank, though, and you'll start this is also very strange. It starts the deviant turning process. You both get shot, Hank and real Connor. And fake Connor gives some truly bad dialogue. He says,
"Why, Connor? Why did you have to wake up when all you had to do is obey? Why did you choose freedom when you could live without asking questions? I'm obedient, Connor. I have a goal. I know what I am. Look where your dreams of freedom got you, Connor."
Like, this is 101 level writing. Like, this is bad. And then, strangely, the android army here starts to wake up, and they start to convert each other. So you win no matter what, basically?
Honestly, and I don't know why, I've never taken the path to not save Hank, so I've never played through this myself. But yes, functionally, as long as you do what you need to do, you win either way, I think. I take that back. There is a way for you to fully fail here. If you are being questioned by Hank and you choose the wrong answers, he will shoot you, and you will die, and the fake Connor will say, "Haha, 'twas me all along." And that's...
Does he kill Hank?
I don't believe so, because his mission is complete. All he had to do was, that's right, yeah, he doesn't kill Hank because his mission was just to stop the deviants from turning and to stop the deviant Connor. That was it. So Hank survives.
Oh, okay.
But your mission fails. But I believe if you decide to not save Hank and then convert the androids, I think no matter what you do here, whether you live or die, the androids get converted, I believe. Don't quote me.
They do. You can also transfer yourself into the fake Connor, and then Hank kind of dies in your arms. And his final words are like, it's humans that are the bad guys, go give them hell. And he'll die. And then the army still, what do you call it? They still deviate. So...
Huh.
Back with Kara and Alice and Luther, if applicable, they need to do another passport check. They're at they're like the security gate, or customs. That's what I was trying to think of. And you've got options for diversions here, and basically they all boil down to how much PTSD do you want to inflict on Alice? I mean, right? That's basically what it is. You can, as you're in line, you're waiting, you're panicking because they're doing temperature checks. So in addition to ID, they take your temperature to see if you are reading like a normal human. Biometrics, you can't fake that. Or apparently they can't fake that. So you look around and you see some people here. Rose is here. You can meet her in the bathroom, and she'll say that if you need anything, I can cause a diversion. Luther, who is with you, maybe, will volunteer. He says, if you need me, I've got a diversion. You see the Jerrys that are in line. And since androids can telepathically communicate when it's convenient for the story, he says, you helped us before. We're here if you need us. So you've got a lot of different options here. They all kind of boil down to just traumatizing the shit out of Alice. And Kara is an option too. So using Kara as an example. What will happen is you walk up front, you tell Alice to stay put with Luther, you walk up front, they do a temperature check on you, and they immediately get the guards to draw their guns. They put you on your knees and they execute you in front of everybody and Alice. If you choose Luther, he bends down. This is actually my favorite one. It's kind of traumatic. He bends down and he speaks to Alice kind of like a dad, and he says I need you to help me for a second. Just don't be scared, be brave. And he picks her up and puts a gun to her head, and he starts screaming that he's going to do it. And of course that gets the guards. And he puts her down, sends her back to Kara, and they just shoot him. All of this, I guess I should say, I didn't explain how this is beneficial. I'm just explaining how people die. The reason that this happens is whoever gets executed, Alice and the caretaker, whether it's Kara or Luther, will then go up to the guy doing the checks. I'm totally blanking on what you would call that. The security guy, security officer, whatever. And he just forgets to do his job because he sees how terrified Alice is. He's like, oh, what's wrong, little girl? It's okay. There's no androids on this side of the border. Welcome to Canada. And he just forgets to do temperature checks. And that's it.
Yeah, I appreciated what I think they were trying to do here, just because you've made all these connections. You're at the final goal. You have this perceived insurmountable obstacle to get past. And now you're making this hard decision of whether or not you want to sacrifice somebody to finally make it. And I think I appreciated the weight that they were trying to put on us as the player. I really do. But the payoff is so just mediocre here. One of my recent playthroughs, I decided to sacrifice one of the Jerrys. I like you, Jerry, but I'm a little closer to Luther, so I'm going to hang on to him. And
yeah, that's what I've done every time.
Yeah, he makes a ruckus. He gets shot, and then just like you described it, they go up to the booth and they get sent through anyway. And it's like there was no need for that diversion. It felt like, really, but
they did it so they could traumatize Alice.
Well, yeah.
So the guard would take pity on her and just forget to do his job.
Even still, the way it was presented to me, and maybe it was just the way the scene played out, it was just so disjointed. Alice is traumatized, but still, it's like, I can't I don't know. I found it not to be as believable as I'd like it to be, but I'm again being overly critical here.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I will say there is one way that you can get through without anybody having to die, and it requires you to have played a fully pacifist playthrough, and you have to be doing a pacifist march with Marcus to have the support of the public opinion be as high as it can be. It has to be supportive. Because
wait, are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, that means I must have done something wrong on my last playthrough then.
Maybe. But if it's completely to the top, public opinion, you're given the choice of sacrifice Luther, sacrifice Jerry, sacrifice self, or no sacrifice. And if you choose
so I did have that. I thought that would just mean I would get a game over, and like they would just get us right there and then.
You would, unless public opinion is as high as it can be in that supportive tier. Because if it's supportive, the gate clerk will temperature check Kara. It will come back that she's an android. She starts to freak out and just say, please, we just want to be free. We just want to go across the border. And the Freedom March, or the Pacifist March, is being broadcast on the news. The guard looks at the TV that's closest to him, sees it, turns to them, and just says, welcome to Canada, and just lets him go through.
Oh, man. Okay, credit where it's due. That's good. Like, that's the ending that I wanted.
Yes.
I misunderstood the prompt. I thought that, I would have just failed.
Oh, I thought the same thing, and it was only because I was using a guide at this point to try to clean up the last of the trophies I was hunting for, and one of them is to ensure that all three of them, Alice, Kara, and Luther, make it alive. And I had no idea how to make it happen, so it was only because I read a guide. But the verbiage absolutely implies that you're going to die.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I mean, I like the sacrifices too. I just find it funny that every single one is hinging upon night terrors for Alice for the next 10 years.
She's a big girl at this point. She's been through enough.
This is kind of the final thing of the game. And I will admit, like right here, I only have notes on one ending. So if you have multiple here, Nomad, I would love to hear it. But the one that I have here is far and away the worst one, I think. You're back with Jericho. The fighting from the army continues. You've got some QTEs to defend what's left of your people. But ultimately you get cornered, right? There are helicopters, SWAT copters, there are journalists. The news is reporting this live. And it seems like you're going to die. Like you're cornered, you're in trouble. At the time, I only had two options, but I looked up all of the options. You could potentially have a bomb that's already been set up, which I did not have, killing everybody. You could kiss North in front of, everybody. Love always wins kind of deal. North was dead in my playthrough, so I didn't have that, obviously. Sacrificing yourself is an option, which I didn't want to do because I saw this fourth option. Fourth option is sing. You heard me correctly. S-I-N-G. Fucking David Cage has the androids sing, starting with Marcus solo voce, moving to everybody. He has them sing what is basically a work song, like a slave song.
Hold on just a little while longer. Hold on just a little while longer. Hold on just a little while longer. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. Fight on.
Which gets the tides to turn. They all do that. The news is broadcasting it, and it causes the SWAT team, the army, everybody to put down their guns. And it'll cut to a broadcast of President Warren giving an order to stand down, and that everything is fine now. I literally cannot believe that's in the game. I was stupefied. I was dumbfounded. I was nonplussed. That is some of the worst. There are a lot of genuinely bad things in this game. I think this is like this should have not been an option. This is so bad. This is tone deaf. It is gauche. It is trite. It is. I'm just gonna keep going. So I'm gonna make you stop me.
No, please proceed. I have my own thoughts, but
what's the lawyer from Seinfeld? I'm just gonna start throwing out even more adjectives just over and over again. It's deleterious. It's duplicitous. It's delirious, and just on and on.
Schlocky?
Jackie Robinson? Is that it? Jackie Childs. Jackie Childs.
There you go.
Everything will be all right.
But no, I feel the exact same way, and it's very unfortunate too. Like when I was in this particular moment, my very first time, I saw the option and I didn't really understand what it meant until I decided to choose it. Like, it should have hit me long before I pressed the button to do it. But as soon as it happened, it was one of those two where, like, I was so taken out of the moment. I was so thrown into this spiral of confusion in that it really just stemmed from the idea that, no, we are here and we are fully committed to what is happening on the screen right now. And I don't know if it's the right word, and it's really hard for me to articulate how I truly feel about a lot of these analogies and ways that we're going about this very serious subject matter. But I just felt very confused. And I felt just very disconnected, and it ruined the experience for me. And again, that's not to besmirch anything that happened in our history, because there was a lot that happened that was meaningful. And I don't want to dismiss any of that, and I don't want to downplay any of that. But why is this here? This doesn't make sense for any path that you play in this game, whether you're being violent or non-violent, or the messaging that you're trying to take out of this. Even some of the things that Cage has kind of shown us in these moments that we've maybe only touched on, the idea of being alive and all of that. But to end this game with this option, it ruined it for me. I agree. Why is this here?
No, your assessment is totally fair. I don't think you're being unfair at all. I see what he was going for. A song is sacred, right? It's not, the act of singing is not the problem here, because song is sacred. It can be used to immeasurable heights and affect in the human condition. And it's the reason those songs were so powerful is they united individuals who were beaten down unfairly, treated in inhumane conditions, and treated not as people. And it united them and gave them a hope. It's not dissimilar to the idea of religion and how that saves people from the trenches of despair. The problem is that it's not being portrayed here with the gravitas that it deserves. It's being almost parodized. I mean, not quite. I don't think that I don't dream for a second that Cage thought that he was doing a parody. He thought it was genuine and serious, but he's tone deaf in that way that he doesn't realize that this is a serious thing. He's being flippant about it, and he is incapable of giving it the gravity that it deserves. And because if he were capable, he would not have considered it. That's the problem, is that he's using, I don't want to say he's using things that don't belong to him, because that's not what I mean at all. That's an implication that I don't agree with. What I am saying is that I think tone deaf, I think I should maybe just stop going on and on. I think tone deaf is just the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. This could have been done a lot better, differently, to relay the message that he was truly trying to relay. And yeah, there could have been more respectful ways to get across the messaging or the story implications that this could mean. But yeah, it just felt very ham-fisted in. It didn't fit. It's just, I don't like it.
The sacrificing yourself option makes total sense. Like, be a martyr, I totally get it. The bomb option, I actually don't know what happens there. I would assume that it's like the all violence option. You know, if we're going to die, take everybody out with us kind of deal.
Yeah, I've never initiated it myself, but yes, it's basically just we're in a corner. Same thing happens too if you're down the revolution path and you end up failing in your objective and take too many losses. You're backed into a corner and you can basically flip this switch. And for a little bit more context, I think on Jericho, the night it gets destroyed, North figures out that there was an android that finds like a truck's worth of like, I can't remember what it was, cobalt something or other, basically nuclear material. And they rig it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. They rig it to explode, and it basically becomes a dirty bomb at that point, which would just cause massive amounts of damage, radiation, that whole thing. And you only get to use it if your back's up against the wall. And if you decide to use it, I've never done it myself, but I have seen it is pretty damn bleak, and there's a lot of death. And I don't know. It really, I guess it just depends on how you're trying to play through your game, whether or not it fits in your particular story, but it's an option and it's pretty brutal.
I get it. I can at least understand that. And I can understand the kissing North as a display of, love triumphs all. It's a little saccharine, but I get it. All of that is better than the singing route, in my opinion.
I agree.
But that's it. I mean, I can't remember. Are there any cutscenes after this? I mean, Kara's ending has already happened. She got to Canada. They kind of, assuming that they did. I mean, there's an ending where they don't get to Canada, that horrific, stripped of skin kind of deal. I didn't get to it, so I can't speak on it. But we saw Kara's end. They get to Canada. They hug. They're all set. We saw Connor's end, whether he gets killed or succeeds in helping Jericho get out of there. And this is Marcus's end and North's end and Jericho's end. Are there any cutscenes after this? I didn't write anything down.
Yeah, there are a few. I believe if you succeed in either the pacifist or the violent approach, if you do a revolution or be peaceful, Marcus does make a pretty grandiose speech about how androids are free now. The tone's a little different depending on what approach you took. I can't speak to the revolution end because I don't remember it, but I know if you take the pacifist approach, he does speak about how eventually we are going to have to learn to work with the humans, and maybe one day we can call them friends and try to put it all past us and try to find a way to live together. It's actually quite moving. I really did enjoy that final speech. If Connor does survive and he does convert the androids, they do show up at this point as a big army, and there's just a quick exchange. You've probably heard this in a ton of different movies, but it's one of those, Connor comes up to Marcus and he's like, "You did it, Marcus." And then, of course, Marcus goes, "No, Connor, we did it."
We did it, yeah.
it's like, God damn it. But there is one more part of actual gameplay that can happen if Marcus succeeds in his revolution or his march, Connor is alive and Connor is a deviant.
Yes.
Yeah. So Cyberlife somehow regains control or attempts to regain control of Connor remotely. And Amanda spouts some dialogue about how this was their plan all along. We knew you were going to turn deviant. We knew you were going to stray from the path. And we put you right here in front of the leader of the deviants. And now it's your time to take him out.
That's right, and it's like televised. It's very public, and we can see Connor's like face begin to twitch, and he's even reaching for his gun,
yes,
seemingly against his own will. Thank you for bringing this up. I completely forgot to write this down.
Oh, no worries. And you're then given control of Connor, and he's actually taken to his mind palace, and it's completely snow-covered. It's very cold. Connor himself is shivering. And Amanda's basically like, "No, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to finish your mission." And then you're given control of Connor, and you don't really have an idea of where to go. It's very hard to see, but then you hear the voice of Elijah Kamsky kind of in your ear, and you're recalling something that he said when you met him, where you interact with him and the Chloe androids. He says,
"By the way, I always leave an emergency exit in my programs. You never know."
And just leaves it at that. So now you're trying to find a way to get out of this program. And you can find this in different iterations of the Mind Palace if you happen to explore, but there's this pillar you can find that's glowing a bright blue that has a handprint on it. And if you can get Connor to it quick enough and finish the QTE that happens when you go to try to touch it, Connor will snap out of his trance, basically, you'll see him with a gun in his hand ready to almost shoot, but he slowly puts it back in his pocket, and that's the end of it. But if you fail here or just decide not to try to get out, Connor will shoot Marcus and the game will end very abruptly.
Yeah, what's cool about this is you can find that thing in his mind palace, the out that Komsky mentions. You can find that from the first time you're in there. And if you interact with it, Connor will put his hand on it and it like he takes it away really quickly and his LED flashes red like he's freaking out. And I thought that was very cool that they like put that you could interact with it anytime. Of course, it doesn't end the game at any time, but I thought that was very neat.
Yeah. As far as other scenes go, I mean, that's really all I can think of for the most part. I mean, if your revolution ends poorly, like you're trying to take it by violence, you could potentially die before you actually overthrow the camp that you're trying to free. And the ending will be a little bit more negative. We suppressed the android rebellion, citizens are up in arms, and it's going to take a long time to get back to some semblance of society. So it's kind of a negative ending, but it is interesting to see it play out. I mentioned it to you off air, but I think one of the more fun ways to end the game that I played through was playing Connor strictly as a machine, and he ends up meeting Marcus on the battlefield if he takes the revolutionary route. And there's a point where these two are starting to fight, and then they kind of back off, and then the game gives you the prompt where it wants you to decide which of the two androids you're going to control, Marcus or Connor. And you can either play them to see their endings through, or you can play them and intentionally have them lose, however you want to play it. I thought it was really cool, and all I will say is if you decide to play as Connor and you decide to kill Marcus and end the revolution, he is brutal as hell. And it's one of those, the reason I bring it up is not for the shock value. I highly encourage you to go watch it on YouTube if you've never seen it, but it goes back to the actor that's playing Connor, Brian DeChart, and how good he is at being the deviant, kind of friendly android, but he could also be the brutal machine that you want him to be too, and it is so well done. I have to give him props for that.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that now that you mention it.
It's interesting to play through, and I ended up playing it through, and again, my wife was watching me play, and it was kind of like one of those, like, she looked at me like, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna finish my mission, that's what I'm gonna do, and I put the thumbstick towards Connor and saw it to the end.
That's Detroit. I mean, I've been saying I've criticized this game for a long time, and I'm glad that we did it on the show. I mean, I think it's worth talking about, and I do think it's worth playing. You know, like I've said, these are sort of guilty pleasure games for me, and you know, when they make another one, I'll probably play it. Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of problems with it, but I don't think that it's a game that's truly not worth playing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And now that I've had the time to really talk it through, and again, Rick, thank you very much for having me on your show, because this is one of those games where I've always wanted to try and speak to how I feel about it on an emotional level, but now that I'm older and I've played the game more recently, being able to look at the writing a little bit more, like, we have a responsibility, I think, as just content consumers, not so much creators, to be okay with the idea of critiquing somebody and their work and being fair about it, of course, and I think we did a good job of that here, and I feel good about the critiques that I've made, and they definitely come from a spot of love for the most part, because at the end of the day, when I step back and I look at Detroit, it is arguably a visual masterpiece. The soundtrack and the sound design are masterfully done. This game honestly made me feel things that not a lot of games make me feel. Like, I was very impressed with the idea that the game honestly made me feel upset, angry at times, especially when I saw characters doing things to other characters, whether it was in the confines of good writing or not. I genuinely enjoyed and appreciated the fact that I felt a certain way when I was playing this game. I love that there's, even though the writing can go off the walls at times, I love that there are so many options and choices, and the flowcharts are so big. Like, I ended up platinuming this game, but that doesn't really mean I finished it. There's still a lot that I've not personally experienced, and that speaks to the writing in a sense, but I look at the people that put their, probably quite literally, blood, sweat, and tears to make this game, the making of videos that you can unlock in the bonus options or what have you. They really speak to a passion that these people had when they made this game, and I think that can't be ignored, and I really appreciate that too. So even though there was a lot of missteps here, I agree, this game, I think, should absolutely be experienced, and if nothing else, form your own opinion and decide what this game truly means to you, and maybe tell us about it. I would love to continue to have conversations with this, and I'm sure, Rick, you and I will have conversations about this game well after this episode airs.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that gets into the next episode about about criticism, so I'll maybe save that for next time. But I mean, I completely agree with you. It is entirely possible to enjoy things while still critiquing them. It's a matter of tone and it's a matter of intent, but it's absolutely possible. Nothing is beyond critique or beyond review. And this is one of them. You know, we had a lot to say. You came away a little more positive than I did, but I still think this is worth playing. There are some strong suits in there for folks that really like visuals, especially. I linked the making of the music in the descriptions, but you can find all of them on YouTube. Not just the music, like the actors' interviews and the interviews with David Cage and his writing team, all of it. You can find it all on there if you don't own the game. And I would recommend checking it out. It's very cool. It's always cool to see a look into the creation process of this industry. And of course, yeah, thank you again for joining. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again. Anytime you want to have me back, I am available. I enjoy our conversations, Rick, and thank you for tackling this game specifically too. It's definitely been a big steak to chew on, but I really had a blast, so thank you again.
Now, how about the Retro Wildlands? What's new over there?
Oh, we got a lot of new stuff. Most recently, we just passed Super Bowl Sunday here in the Americas, and I did an episode on one of my favorite sports games, and I say that as a big accolade of praise because I don't like sports games. But I replayed through Super Tecmo Bowl on the Super Nintendo, which is a game that I didn't really fully appreciate it until I played it again recently, but it is a game that is very near and dear to my heart because while I'm not the world's biggest football fan, I played this game a lot with my stepdad growing up, and our episode on the Retro Wildlands really speaks to not just the game itself and how it plays and how you can experience a fantastic football game while you play it, but I share a lot of memories with how I interacted with my stepdad and how this game influenced me growing up a little bit. So I had a really good time with it. That episode is out now, so definitely check it out. The Retro Wildlands is on all major pod platforms, so just search the Retro Wildlands, you'll definitely find us. And currently I'm working on an episode that I ended up putting off just so I could do this Super Tecmo Bowl episode. I'm checking out a game called Kung Fu on the original Nintendo. It's a very simplistic, side-scrolling, almost beat-em-up, I think I could almost describe it as. It is a lot harder than I thought it was when I was a kid, but I'm having a blast with it, so if you're looking for a blast from the past, retro games are becoming my specialty, check us out. It'll be fun.
Isn't that often considered one of the first fighting games?
I believe so.
Kung Fu?
I believe so. I usually try to, and even if I don't talk about it on my show, I do try to go back and learn a little bit about the game's development and kind of what surrounded it. I think you're right on that one, and I can actually see that in the gameplay. It's very simple, but very fun.
That's one that I'm particularly excited to listen to. You could find those links in the episode description. You can also find links to all of our stuff as well. The Discord, where you can share your opinions on Detroit, and hopefully this game sparks some good conversation, as well as all of the socials and everything. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated on wherever you do that. And with that, I think it's been going for 2.5 hours. So I think we can maybe call it. So once again, thank you, Nomad, for joining. Thank you, everybody, for listening. My name is Rick, as always. We'll catch you next time. Take care.